Chapter 1068. The Dharma Supreme sat down, his gaze sweeping across the faces of everyone present. He said indifferently, "What are your thoughts on today's matter?" Yi sighed with a bitter smile. "It's far more serious than we imagined." All the second Grandmasters sighed together. Yi pondered for a moment before he said, "Lord Dharma Supreme, I'll be bold to ask you a question." The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, "Go ahead. Is this Chuyang the master of the Calamity Sword?" Yi's expression was solemn as he asked the question word by word. This question had been lingering in Yi's heart for a long time. He had also asked the Dharma Supreme once before. However, the Dharma Supreme did not answer directly at that time. He only said that he would wait and see. Today, at this gathering, Yi brought up this question again. However, his state of mind was already very different from back then. At that time, Chuyang was just a negligible hidden danger. However, now, he had become an opponent that could compete with the big clans. Although this was nothing in itself and was not qualified to have anything. However, the strength of the backer behind him was shocking. When the other 8 second Grandmasters heard this, they could not help but prick up their ears. This matter was really too important. If Chuyang was the master of the Calamity Sword, then the big clans were really in danger. They had to think of a way to get rid of him as soon as possible. The Dharma Supreme was silent for a moment before he said, "I don't think so. Or maybe I didn't find out." All the second Grandmasters' hearts were beating like drums. The Dharma Supreme's words were remarkable. Was it true or not? The Dharma Supreme's eyes fell on Li Xiangxi's face. He said indifferently, "Xiangxi, what do you think?" Li Xiangxi laughed bitterly and said, "I don't have much contact with this person. However, cough cough, the Li clan is in a very awkward position now. It's hard to say anything." All the second patriarchs snorted in unison. Of course you wouldn't panic now that you had one of the tribulations in your clan. However, you said such meaningless words. Xiangxi, is that Li Xiongtu in your clan confirmed to be one of the tribulations? The Dharma Supreme asked with a smile. I'm really not sure about that. Li Xiangxi shook his head and smiled bitterly. Lord Dharma Supreme, I'm just going to speak the truth here. If we really believe that he was one of the tribulations, the Li clan would not have come to the medicine banquet this time. But if he were to deny it, there was nothing he could do. This matter is currently a mess. Shi Jing from the Shi family said in annoyance. You dumb chicken! In my opinion, no one here is more clear-headed than you. You're just trying to take advantage of me. The Dharma Supreme smiled. I do believe in the words yearning. However, in my opinion, that might not be the one in your family. He said indifferently. For generations, before Calamity Sword Master's wings were fully grown, Calamity would not show himself. Hidden in the mortal world, it was impossible to distinguish between them. For 10,000 years, I don't know how many people have been wrongly killed, but in the real tribulation, no one has died. As for your family's Li Xiongtu, he had already spread this sort of rumor long ago. Furthermore, he did it in public. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, Do you think that with so many of us here, we really can't kill Li Xiongtu? Even if the Li clan protects him with all its might, what can you do? Li Xiangxi was sweating profusely. You're right, Lord Dharma Supreme. However, he was thinking in his heart, even I can't tell if that person in my family is one of the tribulations. Can you really deduce it just by speculating? The Dharma Supreme stared at him for a while and finally said, Xiangxi, you can leave first. The Li clan should not participate in the discussion this time. Li Xiangxi looked at him in shock. The 8 second Grandmasters looked at him fiercely. This sentence of the Dharma Supreme was tantamount to saying that Li Xiangxi did not believe the Dharma Supreme's words at all. In other words, although Li Xiangxi was sitting here now, he could actually be considered as a traitor. Lord Dharma Supreme, are we going to let him leave so easily? Xiao Sei's face was filled with murderous intent. Why don't we just kill him here? What if he goes out and reveals our secret? What should we do then? That's right, Lord Dharma Supreme. This time, the Li clan has already made it clear that they are on the side of the Tribulation Sword Master. Sooner or later, they will become a huge threat. This time, we will get rid of Li Xiangxi and also remove a huge threat for the future. Lan Mushu said through gritted teeth. The other second Grand Masters all agreed. Li Xiangxi's face was ashen. If they were to really fight, there would be no chance of him escaping alive. Only death awaited him. The crowd was in an uproar. The Dharma Supreme looked at Li Xiangxi and pondered for a long time. Then he said, "Xiangxi, leave. Remember what I said today. One day you will realize. Some things will always be beyond your expectations. There will always be misunderstandings in many things. And some things will always be regretted." He waved his hand indifferently and said, "Go. I will give you a chance to regret in the future." Lord Dharma Supreme. Everyone exclaimed in unison. The Dharma Supreme's expression did not change. He only waved his hand again. "Thank you, Lord Dharma Supreme. Xiangxi will never forget Lord Dharma Supreme's kindness today." Li Xiangxi cupped his fists and said emotionally, "No need to stand on ceremony. Just remember my words." The Dharma Supreme said solemnly, "If you leave now, there is no need for you to participate in the medicine banquet. Go back to the Li clan directly. If you continue to stay here, I am afraid you will be killed." Li Xiangxi trembled and said, "Yes." He stood up and walked out in big strides. When he reached the door, he hesitated. The Dharma Supreme looked at his back view with a frown. But Li Xiangxi only hesitated for a moment before he really opened the door and walked out. Between the current interests of a big clan and the future prosperity of his descendants, he obviously chose the latter. The Dharma Supreme sighed softly. "Lord Dharma Supreme, should we send someone to kill him?" Xiao Sei asked. "Once Li Xiangxi leaves, he will become an irreconcilable enemy of ours. It will be completely different from the small fights we had previously." The Dharma Supreme shook his head indifferently. "No need." He was silent for a moment before he said, "The Li clan is not worthy of such attention. If he is not one of the tribulations, the Li clan will naturally still lean towards us in the future. If he is really one of the tribulations, we can also take this opportunity to grab hold of this clue and lure out the real tribulation sword master. Therefore, Li Xiangxi cannot be killed." Everyone was enlightened. However, the tribulation sword master is a long-term concern, while Chu Yang is a short-term concern. The Dharma Supreme tapped the table lightly with his finger. "Everyone, don't underestimate this Chu Yang. The huge power that he can bring is now something that even the law enforcement officers have to take seriously." "Yes," Yi said solemnly. "This Chu Yang is indeed a huge concern at the moment. His backing is too strong, too strong. Therefore, we have to get rid of him." The Dharma Supreme sighed softly. He said, "I remember that thousands of years ago, I once told all of you that every clan must nurture a secret force. This force must not be known to anyone. Now, it is time for this force to be put to use." Xiao Sei nodded heavily. "Lord Dharma Supreme, you mean assassination?" "Assassination of Chu Yang." The Dharma Supreme shook his head lightly. "No. The power of this young junior, Chu Yang, mainly comes from that mysterious woman. Therefore, killing Chu Yang alone will not help at all. It will even invite the crazy revenge of a peerless expert. Now that the Tribulation Sword Master is about to be born, we cannot afford such a loss. Therefore, if we want to kill, the first one to be killed is that mysterious and powerful woman." The Dharma Supreme tapped the table lightly with his finger and took away one of the teacups in front of him. "If we want to do this, we need all of us here to take action together. In addition, we need to add the secret force, the combined power of hundreds of supreme martial artists, and invite Lord Wu to come out and do all we can to encircle and annihilate them, even at the cost of sacrifice." The Dharma Supreme's words were very heavy. Every word was like a huge hammer that hammered into the depths of everyone's hearts. "Moreover, we need to create an environment where we have no choice but to fight to the death. Only then can we succeed." A hint of bloodlust flashed in the Dharma Supreme's eyes. "Juga Hutu, your family's great nebula divide of heavenly secrets array will be put to use here. Juga Hutu trembled and said, Yes, I will listen to the Dharma Supreme's instructions. The great nebula divide of heavenly secrets array draws on the power of the heavenly way, the power of the stars, the power of the earth, the veins of the mountains and rivers, the spirits of the people and the souls of the supreme martial artists. It is enough to kill experts who are 3 times more powerful than the array. If this great nebula divide of heavenly secrets array of heavenly secrets has 108 supreme martial artists taking part in it, then, in this world, who can surpass the combined power of all 108 people, including you and me, by more than 4 times? The Dharma Supreme said indifferently. Therefore, the basic plan is set here. With 108 supreme martial artists taking charge of the eye of the array, and a total of 300 supreme martial artists maintaining it, Lord Wu Jueqing will provide support and protect the array with poison. This way, the power of the array can be doubled. It is equivalent to thousands of supreme martial artists attacking at the same time. Even if Beluqing and Ningtianya come at the same time, they will also die here. There is absolutely no chance of luck. Everyone listened with heavy hearts, but they couldn't help but heave a long sigh of relief. If that was the case, no matter how powerful that woman was, she would definitely die. Even if she was a deity, she would definitely not be able to escape from such an array. The Dharma Supreme was really generous. Once he made a move, it was already such a huge and powerful commotion. It's just that, how can we lure that woman into the array? Juga Hutu asked with a frown. Currently, they are with the Moon Breeze couple. If the Moon Breeze couple is in danger, she will definitely come to their rescue. The Dharma Supreme's eyes flashed. And the Moon Breeze couple will definitely be in danger. When the array is fully set up, I will invite the Moon Breeze couple for a talk in my name. With the temperament and character of the Moon Breeze couple, I have full confidence that they will come. Everyone perked up. Brilliant plan! The Dharma Supreme's long hair swayed even though there was no wind. He said indifferently, How long has it been since I have schemed against someone like this? This woman, even if she dies, is worthy of being proud. He had finally been overtaken. Thuk. Just now, he saw a chat group of authors. One of the authors joked that Feng Ling had really created a new record. Basically, all the great gods had smashed him one by one. Ha, sigh, his heart ached. 7 days, 3 nights, crazy updates of close to 120,000 words, and he couldn't even maintain a first place? We are not far behind now. Everyone, let's work harder and charge ahead. Man fights for pride, Buddha fights for incense. I have been fighting and losing all the way till now. I have long been unyielding. I will not admit defeat. I still want to fight. Even if we lose twice, we still have 24 days. We will fight till the end. Chapter 1069. The 2 supreme martial artists gathered together. Juga Hutu took out the diagram of the great nebula divide of heavenly secrets array and explained it in detail. Juga Hutu did not want to reveal his clan's greatest trump card. However, if Xiexing was not eliminated, the big clans would feel like there was a steel knife hanging over their necks. They could neither advance nor retreat. Just like in today's auction, Xiexing alone suppressed everyone on his side. Everyone had no choice but to give her money despite their grievances. Why? If she was unhappy, she could wipe you out. And it was to wipe out your entire clan, not just one person. Who dared to disobey? If they disobeyed, they would cough. If they coughed, it meant that they were unhappy. If they continued to be unhappy, they would kill. This grievance almost caused everyone to have a brain hemorrhage. Smiling and throwing in more than double the amount to buy a bunch of medicine, and these people were all high and mighty people who had been at the top for thousands of years. Who could tolerate this? Not to mention, besides Xiexing, there was also Beluqing on Chu Yang's side. Now Yulingxue and Feng Yuro were also on Chu Yang's side. Such strong power made the whole world look askance. Not to mention Yulingxue's brother, Wu Qianqian, Beluqing's brother, heavenly in-body and innate spirit meridians, Zi Xieching's brother, innate body. These were three demon-like characters in the future. As long as there was space for them to grow up, they would definitely replace Buluqing, Feng Yu and Zi Xieching as the other three overlords of the world. Top figures. When that time came, with the addition of the new and old, the big clans would not be able to catch up even if they ate shit. Once Chu Ying's power rose, it would be unstoppable. Therefore, even if Shugahutu was unwilling, he could only do so. The Dharma Supreme stood with his hands behind his back, looking at Shugahutu and explaining. He said lightly, "For now, kill that woman first, then kill Buluqing and Feng Yu. Lastly, we'll deal with Chu Jiang and those little girls." He slightly lowered his head, and his long hair nearly covered his eyes. Only 2 rays of chilling light penetrated through the seams of his hair. He casually clenched his fist, and a thin staff formed from qi appeared in his hand. He pointed at the formation map and said indifferently, "Yi Clan! Guard here! The lowest 50 supreme martial artists! Yi Di, any problem?" The Knight Emperor suddenly gritted his teeth and said, "No problem." The Dharma Supreme pointed his thin rod in another direction and said, "This place is the gate of life and death." He needed a sharp sense of death. "Shao Se, can your Shao clan take responsibility?" Shao Se calculated for a while and said, "Including the hidden forces of the Shao clan, we can mobilize 40 supreme martial artists and myself. Then I feel that if we want to prevent that woman from breaking out of the encirclement, and breaking through life and death, this force is not enough." The Dharma Supreme pondered for a moment. He knew that what Shao Se said was the truth. If Zi Xieching only wanted to escape when she was seriously injured, with her strength, she could totally kill Shao Se and the others and escape far away. Then, there would be no end of trouble in the future. Thus, he said, "Since that's the case, I'll send you another 20 supreme martial artists from the law enforcement headquarters." Shao Se was overjoyed and said, "If that's the case, I dare to guarantee with my head that nothing will go wrong." The Dharma Supreme nodded. He pointed at a few other places and made arrangements. When he reached the first place, he was silent for a moment before he said, "There are 50 supreme martial artists from the law enforcement headquarters guarding this place." Everyone nodded solemnly, cursing the Li clan in their hearts. If the Li clan did not betray them, then with the combined strength of all these supreme martial artists and the great constellation array, they could totally recreate the power of the tribulation. In fact, it would be several times stronger. Once the Li clan left, this good thing would be gone. Bastard, none, pop-up window square, warning. Finally, the Dharma Supreme looked at the position of the eye of the array in the center. After thinking for a long time, he said, "I will do my best to get Lord Wu to guard this place personally, together with the 20 elders and 8 high priests of the law enforcement headquarters. Success in one battle. I will personally patrol the periphery." The Dharma Supreme stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "In this battle, other than the forces of the various clans guarding their homes, all the elites of Chongtian will be mobilized, just to kill 4 people." The 8 second patriarchs instantly felt their blood boil. They instinctively felt their blood boiling and even their hair was about to stand on end. Buluqing, Feng and you and I are at most peak experts of the heavenly layer. The Dharma Supreme smiled indifferently and said, "But that woman is a true expert of the extreme Tao. Therefore, the name of this battle shall be Slaying of the Tao." Slaying of the Tao. Yi Di murmured and repeated, only feeling his blood boiling. This battle directly concerns the future of the Chongtian clans and law enforcement officers. Everyone, a battle of life and death cannot be taken lightly. Sacrifices are inevitable, everyone must be fully mentally prepared. The Dharma Supreme had basically finished his arrangements for this battle. All the supreme martial artists started to calculate the forces that they could mobilize. The sooner this matter is settled, the better. The more secretive, the better. The Dharma Supreme said solemnly, "We must complete all the arrangements before the medicine banquet starts. During this period of time, do whatever you need to do and do not alert the enemy." "Yes." Everyone agreed. The semi-finals of the medicine banquet will be in 2 days. The Dharma Supreme took a deep breath and said, as the pharmacist of the Southeast law enforcement officers, Chu Yang has already entered the semi-finals and cannot be replaced. Moreover, I heard that Chu Yang's medical skills are superb and he has inherited the soul of the ancient medical saint. He is not to be underestimated. The most important thing is that we cannot touch him. Once we do, we will alert the enemy. Yi Di pondered and said, what does the Dharma Supreme mean? Chu Yang is very likely to enter the finals. We have already announced the date of the finals to the world and the bunch of stubborn old men from the Medicine Valley will host it, so it cannot be changed. Before the finals, our men will need to rush over from all over the continent, obviously in a hurry. Therefore, we must deal with these people after the finals. Therefore, the champion's heaven-nourishing jade is very likely to fall into Chu Yang's hands. The Dharma Supreme said solemnly. And the heaven-nourishing jade has the ability to bring the dead back to life and gather souls. Once he gets the heaven-nourishing jade, even if that woman is dead, there is still a certain possibility that he can use the opportunity of nourishing the heavens to revive her. Although such a chance is very slim, and Chu Yang may not live until then, it is still a possibility that we must guard against. Therefore, Chu Yang cannot become the champion. He cannot get the heaven-nourishing jade. The following few sentences were not spoken by the Dharma Supreme, but were added by the crowd one after another. After they finished speaking, everyone realized that their expressions had become even more solemn. They looked at each other and couldn't help but smile bitterly. How could there be such a thing? The Medicine Valley is not under our control. The Dharma Supreme laughed bitterly and pointed out the most crucial point. Without the Medicine Valley, the heaven-nourishing jade cannot be refined either. Therefore, it is best for your pharmacists to ensure that nothing goes wrong and eliminate Chu Yang. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, put an end to this. There must not be any mistake that could lead to a comeback. Shi Jing pondered and frowned. If it is the top pharmacist of each clan, there is a high possibility that Chu Yang will be eliminated. However, our men have also passed the preliminary round and entered the semi-finals, so it cannot be changed either. Moreover, pharmacists who have already participated in the medicine banquet once cannot participate again, because their luck has already dissipated. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, isn't this easy? Yi Di frowned slightly and said, what does the Dharma Supreme mean? The Dharma Supreme walked out and said, we still can't strip Chu Yang's face, but the face of your own pharmacists can be stripped off. Moreover, once you use the soul transfer magic, won't you be able to multiply your energy? Why should you be afraid of luck? He smiled lightly and walked out, leaving behind a sentence. Don't tell me that you don't even know how to use the soul transfer magic. The Dharma Supreme disappeared. The 8 of them looked at each other and stood there in a daze. This method, of course, could work. There was no problem for a veteran pharmacist with experience in the medicine banquet to suppress a newbie like Chu Yang. Moreover, even if one of them couldn't suppress him, how could all of them be inferior to him? Even if they made 8 mistakes, there was still one left. However, as long as Chu Yang made one mistake, it would be over. The chances of winning were above 10%. It could be said that it was foolproof. However, the problem was that in this way, each clan would lose 2 of their most outstanding pharmacists. Skin from a living person, made into a human skin mask, and used the supreme martial artist's cultivation to create it, it could change the appearance in a short period of time. At least, it could maintain its vitality for half a year. Half a year later, when the human skin mask lost its effectiveness and started to wrinkle, the matter would basically be over. Using the soul transfer magic to transfer a portion of the energy of the skinned pharmacist's soul to another person's body, this person would be able to possess everything of this person for a short period of time, including skills. However, it was still only for a short period of time. The apothecary whose soul was transferred would definitely die. However, the apothecary who received the soul transfer would also die in half a year's time, vanishing from this world. In this way, it would be equivalent to the two top pharmacists of the younger generation and the older generation dying an unnatural death. However, while it was easy to destroy, how could it be so easy to nurture a pharmacist? It might not even be possible to have a talented pharmacist in decades or centuries. The contribution of an outstanding pharmacist to a clan was self-evident. This included treating illnesses, prescribing medicines, piercing meridians, increasing cultivation. The role of a pharmacist in the rise of a clan was indispensable. Sacrificing them just like that? Just to prevent Chu Yang from being first? Was it worth it? All the second grandmasters looked at each other. For a moment, none of them could make up their minds. Why do I feel that the Dharma Supreme values this Chu Yang even more than that woman? Ling Fengyun frowned, somewhat puzzled. No, it's the Dharma Supreme values the heaven-nourishing jade. Xiao Sei added after some thought. What do we do now? Everyone's gaze was on Yi Di. Yi Di's face was covered in a dense fog again. He said softly, if we go through so much trouble and sacrifice so many lives to kill that woman, but Chu Yang uses the heaven-nourishing jade to revive her, will our clan still exist? Since we can sacrifice so many supreme martial artists' lives, what's the point of two mere pharmacists? Chapter 1070. The sword spirit's illusory figure floated and seeped into Chu Lu's body like a wisp of mist. Xi Xiecheng pressed one hand on Chu Lu's head and the other hand on the purple crystal vat, continuously injecting yin energy into it. The purple crystal vat was originally yin energy, and the mysterious yin bone-destroying water in it was the world's #1 cold poison. As for the cold yin energy that Xi Xiecheng injected again, in terms of its cold nature, it was even colder than the mysterious yin bone-destroying water. Chu Lu's body was soaked in the mysterious yin bone-destroying water and had already fainted. Slowly, her body became somewhat transparent in the water. The water surface rippled and the sword spirit gave a message. Then Xi Xiecheng said lightly, medicine! Chu Yang took out this special incomplete heavy pill and put it into Chu Lu's mouth. Once the heavy pill entered her mouth, it immediately turned into a rainbow-like color and exploded in Chu Lu's mouth. Various colored mist disappeared into Chu Lu's meridians. This was an incomplete version of the heavy pill. Although it was called incomplete because it lacked the materials of the rare herbs, in reality, it contained a lot of materials. The materials were so precious that it was almost the most precious since ancient times. Purple gas appeared on Xi Xiecheng's face. She exhaled lightly and spat out a gust of purple gas from her mouth. Then, Chu Lu's body was also enveloped by purple gas in the next moment. Chu Yang could clearly see that on Chu Lu's forehead, little by little black things slowly appeared. The color changed from light to dark, and slowly, they actually bulged out of the skin and dripped down like ink. Xi Xiecheng grabbed this black thing in her hand and threw it out. Then, she shouted softly, Sword Spirit, you must protect the consciousness space! Suddenly, a gust of purple light shot out from her eyes. Then, a strong purple gas enveloped the entire purple crystal vat. Streams of colorful things emerged from Chu Lu's body. But under this purple gas, they could not disperse. They obediently gathered into a stream and returned to Chu Lu's mouth and nose. She breathed them in. This is the innate poison of the mother's fetus, Xi Xiecheng said lightly. This poison has the same name in all the planes. It is the poison of heaven and earth. This is the true source of all poisons in the world. Therefore, in the eyes of a quack, Lu's illness is nothing special. No matter what, there was no way to cure it. But in the eyes of the Almighty, it was an earth-shattering opportunity. With the main body of the poison of heaven and earth as a foundation, the human face rainbow spider's poison core and the poisonous flood dragon's poison core. There's also the heavenly poison jade core, black blood poisonous core vine, and other deadly poisons in the world, as well as countless treasures. After Chu Lu recovers this time, she'll have the heavenly poison body, an innate constitution. Xi Xiecheng seemed to be talking to herself. In one breath, he said, furthermore, with the purple chi of heaven and earth that I have painstakingly cultivated to circulate throughout my body, condensing my meridians and expanding my dantian. All the meridians in my body are opened. From now on, I will not encounter any bottleneck until I collapse the sky and shatter the void. The sword spirit protecting her space of consciousness is also a great fortune. Such a situation is hard to come by even in 10,000 years. I don't belong to this world. Therefore, I am a guest from another world. Similarly, the sword spirit does not belong to this world. He is Ain spirit. Therefore, our cooperation is the cooperation of heaven and earth. It is called reincarnation. After reincarnation, I will directly raise Chulur's cultivation to the third stage of martial saint. In the future, the training of her skills and training will be yours. Xi Xieching opened her eyes and looked at Chu Yang. Do you understand? Chu Yang suppressed the excitement in his heart. I completely understand. It's just that the sword spirit once said that Lur needs to take 3 of such heavy pills consecutively. Is it? There's no need, Xi Xieching said decisively. Without my help, of course, she needs 3 pills. But now, with my help, she has completely recovered. As she spoke, an illusory shadow floated out from the unconscious Chu Lur. The sword spirit, who looked exhausted, entered Chu Yang's tribulation space without any hesitation. He only left behind 2 words. Crazy. Xi Xieching smiled. Chu Yang asked. What's wrong? Xi Xieching snorted and said. The method that I said caused this fellow to exhaust too much of his energy. He didn't know at first, but when I used the purple gas, he could only follow my method. Now, this fellow seems to have gone back to recuperate. The sword spirit muttered in the tribulation space. What do you mean by exhausting too much of my energy? This evil woman almost drained all my energy. Even if it's the heavenly imperial court, this is definitely a waste. This crazy person actually used reincarnation in this heavenly imperial court. If I don't call her crazy, I'll really be letting her down. Chu Yang's heart shook. He knew that Xi Xieching was trying her best to create a team for Chu Yang because she was about to leave. He couldn't help but feel touched. After a long time, Xi Xieching removed her hand from Lur's head and fished Chu Lur out of the mysterious bone-destroying water. She used her energy to evaporate the water droplets on Chu Lur's body. Then, she placed her on the bed and wrapped the blanket tightly around her. She heaved a sigh of relief and said, It's okay now. She needs to sleep for 2 days. After 2 days, when she wakes up, she'll be a little girl who has reached the top in 1 step. Chu Yang was finally relieved and kept the purple crystal vat. But when he reached out his hand, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. The mysterious bone-destroying water in the vat had actually become warm. It was like the lake water that had been exposed to the summer sun for a whole day. The temperature was actually not low. Under reincarnation, the cold poison of the mysterious bone-destroying water has already become the energy of Lur's body. This is just some ordinary water. Xi Xieching smiled and said, If you don't mind that this is your sister's bathwater, you can use this water to make a cup of tea. It tastes pretty good too. Chu Yang gritted his teeth and nodded. Okay. I've made some tea for you to drink first. During the meal, Mo Qingwu was still sitting beside Chu Yang. After waiting for a long time and not seeing Chu Lur, she was actually very disappointed. She said, Where's that chilly-like little girl? Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This girl was only 1 year older than Chu Lur, but she actually started to call her little girl shamelessly. Xi Xieching smiled and said, She's cultivating. When she comes out of seclusion, she'll look for you to fight. Mo Qingwu's little head was raised high, her chin facing the sky. She said disdainfully, Humph, just her? Xi Xieching smiled and didn't say anything. Chu Yang glanced at her and thought to himself, I don't know what this elder sister is thinking. Why did Lur's cultivation suddenly improve so much that it's actually higher than Qingwu's now, and now she's even urging the 2 of them to fight? SSS. This doesn't seem right either. Chu Yang was about to dissuade her when he heard Buluqing say happily, It's good to have a fight. My disciple can't lose no matter what. Supreme Martial Artist Bu was very optimistic. Chu still couldn't cultivate yesterday. Even if she could cultivate today, she would have improved with Xi Xieching's help. How much could she improve? His disciple had been tempered by the spiritual spring water and the mysterious Yin bone-destroying water. Now, she was already at the monarch level. Just one more step. She was at the saint level. The Moonbreeze couple also laughed. Feng Yuro said half-jokingly, "Why don't Qian Qian and Xiaowu have a fight too? Whoever wins can become Chu Yang's wife." Yu Lingxue laughed loudly. Wu Qianqian immediately lowered her head, her face red. And Mo Qingwu pouted and said, "I can't fight with Sister Wu now. I can't beat her. I'll cultivate properly in a few days and fight when I surpass her." Everyone nearly fainted. "You've already surpassed her, what's there to fight about?" After everyone laughed for a while, Feng Yuro said, "These 2 days have been a little too quiet. Chu Yang, you shouldn't have appeared so forcefully. In this way, I'm afraid the Dharma Supreme and the big clans will target you." Chu Yang smiled lightly. "I was just about to talk about this problem. Because the upper 3 heavens is in a state of panic now. The Tribulation Sword Master is about to finish his apprenticeship. It's going to be another bloodbath soon." Everyone nodded silently. "It's fine if I keep a low profile, but the current situation forces me to do so. Especially after the battle with the big clans. I also remember that I'm at the heart of the struggle," Chu Yang said frankly. Everyone nodded again. "Therefore, once I rise in the future, people will definitely suspect that I'm the Tribulation Sword Master. In that case, the big clans will not rest until I'm dead. And I don't have the ability to go against the big clans now. Now that the Dharma Supreme has confirmed that I'm not the Tribulation Sword Master, I can only take this opportunity to be high profile and let the Dharma Supreme's words be further ingrained in people's hearts. Let everyone think that I rose before the Tribulation Sword Master. Otherwise, I can't afford to be called the Tribulation Sword Master," Chu Yang said jokingly. Moonbreeze couple, Dong Wushang and the others all laughed. "Therefore, the big clans will definitely be wary of me now, but they won't openly go all out against me. Moreover, on the surface, the situation now is that you guys are my backers. Therefore, if they want to deal with someone, they'll deal with you guys first." Buluqing laughed and said, "So you'll have several years of opportunity to develop? And if they want to deal with us?" It's not that I'm boasting, but in this world, there's really no power that can catch all of us in one fell swoop. For people like us, as long as they can't kill all of us in one blow, even if one of us manages to escape, we'll definitely be the nightmare of the big clans and law enforcement officers." Moonbreeze couple also laughed. What Buluqing said was the standard truth. With their abilities, even if they were shamelessly besieged, even if they couldn't defeat them, it would be easy for them to escape. Xi Xieching smiled faintly. Her expression was one of extreme restraint. Obviously, she was in full agreement with Buluqing and Moonbreeze couple's words. In this world, there was no one who could hurt her. Absolutely no one. Chu Yang himself also agreed with this argument, but there was a faint worry in his heart. Although this was the truth, excessive self-confidence would definitely lead to a loss. He didn't have time to think about it. The news of the medicine banquet had already arrived. 3 days later, the semifinals would begin. Let's continue to fight. After getting drunk last night, we've also released all the pressure we've been under for the past 10 days. Today, we're feeling refreshed. Therefore, we're starting to explode. Chapter 1071. Holding the notice in his hand, Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chu Le's injuries had already healed. And his main purpose of attending the medicine banquet was to heal Chu Le's injuries. Now, he couldn't use it and couldn't withdraw. He was in a difficult position. The heaven-nourishing jade is a good thing. Buluqing saw his hesitation and said, "You must get the heaven-nourishing jade. That thing is equivalent to having an extra life." "An extra life?" Chu Yang asked doubtfully. "Even if the soul disperses, the power of the heaven-nourishing jade can bring the dead back to life. This is the luck of all the pharmacists in the heavenly layer for 1,000 years. Buluching said lightly. Even the heavens can be mended, let alone humans. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. He clenched his fists tightly and said, There's actually such a miraculous item. Then, this heaven-nourishing jade is really a must. I must have it. Yulingshua's eyebrows raised slightly. He wanted to say something, but he forced himself not to. Only the best pharmacist in the world is qualified to get the remnants of the heaven-nourishing jade. You, Xiaoman, are already 20 years old and you're actually determined to get it? You're boasting. Then, during the semi-finals, who's going to cheer for me? Chu Yang rubbed his fists and asked. You actually want to cheer for something that you're so confident in? Xi Xiecheng was dismissive. Not interested. Qin Wu can't go either. There are too many bad people. Buluching shook his head. No time. Moonbreeze shook their heads together. Guide the disciple in his cultivation. I want to practice my saber. Dong Wushang admired his dark saber without even raising his head. Cough cough, I'm going to sleep. Ray Butong yawned and rubbed his eyes. I'm so sleepy these few days. I'll accompany Wushang. Mo Layer smiled. No way! Chu Yang screamed. Such an important matter and you want me to handle it alone? Everyone was silent and busy, pretending not to hear. Mo Qingwu couldn't bear it. She said, Brother Chu Yang, I want to accompany you, but when Lure comes out of seclusion and fights with me. Chu Yang laughed. On the third day, Chu Yang woke up early and went all the way to Han Shaoran. Along the way, Han Shaoran had a lot on his mind. After Chu Yang asked a few times, Han Shaoran finally let out a long sigh. Brother, the Dharma Supreme summoned me last night to ask about your situation. Chu Yang's heart shook. He said, What did you say? Han Shaoran spread out his hands and said, What else can I say? Naturally, he would say whatever he wanted to say. But there's something wrong. Chu Yang smiled and asked, What's wrong? Han Shaoran stopped and looked at him deeply. He sighed softly and said, Brother Chu, I know that you're hiding something. Moreover, the strength behind you is also strong enough. This time, your strong appearance has indeed shocked the heavens. But let me give you a piece of advice. Chu Zhang said seriously. Brother Han, please speak freely. I'm all ears. After all, a backer is just a backer. If you really want to stand firm in the heavens, you still have to rely on yourself. Han Shaoran said seriously. Even if you have a backer, what you're doing is too ostentatious. It is not a coincidence that the Dharma Supreme asked about you. I can faintly feel that. He raised his head and looked at Chu Zhang, saying, You have to be careful. There's a murderous intent behind this. Chu Yang's heart moved. He said gratefully, Thank you, brother. I'll remember it. Han Shaoran said with contradiction, As a law enforcement officer, it's disgraceful for me to secretly communicate with you. However, you didn't do anything wrong. Moreover, you've been of great help to us law enforcement officers. I can't bear to see people being ungrateful. Sigh. Chu Yang nodded. He could feel the contradiction in Han Shaoran's heart. As the law enforcement master, he was the confidant of the Dharma Supreme. No matter what the reason was, Han Shaoran felt that Han Shaoran was bending the law for favoritism when he said this to Chu Yang. To Han Shaoran, who had always been impartial and upright, this was indeed very precious. It was even unbelievable. However, the Dharma Supreme had murderous intent towards Chu Yang. Chu Yang firmly remembered this matter in his heart. When the two came to the registration area, it was already crowded with people. Most of them were from the big clans. There were thousands of people squeezing at the entrance. The pharmacists entered one by one, but the crowd was not allowed to enter. They could only wait outside. Han Shaoran sent in the identity token that Chu Yang received that day. After a while, someone shouted. The last pharmacist to enter the semi-finals, Lin Ri. Everyone was in an uproar. Lin Ri, there's actually someone with this name? Chu Zhang was also stunned. What's going on? Why isn't I here? I'm actually the last one. That person shouted at the top of his lungs. Lin Ri! Lin Ri! Is Lin Ri here? Chu Yang and Han Shaoran were both stunned. They squeezed in and wanted to ask for clarification. Why was Chu Yang the first to pass? Why was there no place for him now? The next moment, both of them didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They saw that the pharmacist was holding up Chu Yang's token. He was still shouting at the top of his lungs. Lin Ri! Lin Ri! Where have you been? Han Shaoran went over with a black face and scolded in a low voice. Bastard! Do you know how to read? That's 2 words. Chu Yang. What Lin Ri? That pharmacist was stunned. He flipped the token over and held it in front of his eyes. With a look of surprise, he said, That's right, it's Lin Ri. Bastard. Han Shaoran snatched it over. He was also dumbfounded when he saw it. The handwriting at the back was sloppy. Chu Yang's Chu character was severely separated. Only the Lin character at the top could be seen clearly. As for the lower part, it was just a curve. Chu Yang's Yang character was even divided into 2 characters. And because of the sloppy handwriting, the side of the radical looked like a Yang character. At first glance, it was the 3 words Lin Ri. There was absolutely no mistake. It was the 5th elder who was too excited and casually scratched out Chu Yang's name. The handwriting was too sloppy. It took a long time to explain it clearly. There was a lot of chatter around. What the heck? This person's name is Lin Ri. TSK, what a good name. Someone was amazed. Lin Ri. Ha! Who's going to name the next one water sex? Another person had a wretched look. Isn't this Chu Yang? When did he change his name to Lin Ri? This was someone who knew young Master Chu. Pfft. Ha! What a good name. It's too rapey. Another person held his stomach and laughed. Chu Yang entered the venue of the semifinals with a black face. Behind him, there was a lot of whispers and countless weird looks. Minister Chu gritted his teeth. Lin Ri. Motherfucker, when I see that old 5th elder later, I must ask him in detail and clarify everything. This was a huge loss of face. In front of him was a long row of platforms. Within a radius of a few hundred feet, there were no big clans or law enforcement officers except for the platforms, pharmacists, and the judges of the Medicine Valley. Here, the Medicine Valley had the final say. Any other forces, even the number 1 Dharma Supreme in the world, were not qualified to watch the competition here. There were only 13 pharmacists who entered the semifinals. Everyone was facing a platform. On the platform, there was a lonely medicine furnace. Every medicine furnace was exactly the same. However, Chu Yang vaguely felt that there was something strange about the aura of a few of the pharmacists. This was clearly a kind of oppressive feeling of death that came from the suppression of one's divine spirit. Moreover, it was these few people who were paying attention to him, whether intentionally or not. Their eyes were filled with hatred and there was a bone-chilling murderous aura. It was as if they could not live under the same sky with him. However, when Chu Yang wanted to observe them quietly, he realized that these people had all turned their heads around without leaving a trace. They faced the medicinal cauldron directly, and did not even look at Chu Yang from the corner of their eyes. Chu Yang only saw a few expressionless faces. These faces reminded Chu Yang of the young valley master of the Medicine Valley who hosted the auction. Chu Yang was stunned. These people's faces were very familiar. He remembered seeing them a few days ago, and they were all very lively. Why, then, in the direction of the entrance, the people of the Medicine Valley began to disperse. They actually chased all the people who were cheering for them a few hundred feet away. At such a distance, there was no need to talk about cheering for them. Those who were weak in cultivation could not see anything at all, let alone recognize the pharmacists on their side. Then, many experts of the Medicine Valley surrounded the place from all directions. The Medicine Valley's defense of this medicine banquet was so tight. Then, a white shadow flashed in front of Chu Yang and the others, and 3 people in white appeared. One of them was holding a stack of cards. It was the zombie-faced young valley master. He said rigidly, "Fellow pharmacists, I am the owner of the prescriptions of the Medicine Valley. These two beside me, one is the high priest of the Medicine Valley and the other is the second high priest. The three of us will be the judges of your semi-finals." There was a commotion among the pharmacists. The high priest and the second high priest. These two people were once people who had won the honor of being the #1 pharmacist in the world back in the day. Everyone was really flattered that these two people would be the judges in person. Chu Yang's eyes also lit up a little. But then, he realized that the zombie-faced person next to him was expressionless. There was no change in his eyes either, as if he was already prepared. "Now, let's start the roll call." The zombie-faced young valley master looked at the cards in front of him and picked up the topmost card. He read, "Lin Ri." Chu Yang's card was the last to be handed up, so it was naturally at the topmost. So, the young valley master called his name first. Chu Yang's face was full of black lines. He said, "It's not Lin Ri. Young valley master, this is my card. The fifth elder's handwriting is messy. He wrote my name wrong." The zombie-faced young valley master couldn't help but be surprised. He lowered his head and looked carefully for a while before he recognized that it was indeed a very abstract word, Chu Yang. The corners of his mouth twitched. He said, "Chu Yang." Chu Yang answered loudly, "Here." The young valley master grunted and raised the card in front of his eyes again. He muttered to himself, "It really looks like Lin Ri." Chapter 1072. Everyone roared with laughter. Although the young valley master had a straight face, he was still a little embarrassed. He was much more careful when he called out the names again. He looked at the names and then at the faces of the people before announcing that they had passed. He called out the names one by one. When he reached the Ling clan, it was Ling Hanwu's name. Chu Yan looked over and saw that Ling Hanwu's expression was stiff. He was even more rigid than those from the Yi and Xiao clans. Chu Yang was startled again. He said tentatively, "Uncle Ling, you're here too?" Ling Hanwu grunted and said, "Yes." Chu Yang was stunned. What was going on? Moreover, the way Ling Hanwu was looking at him was also very strange. Looking at him from the side, he saw that his face seemed to be completely pale. Chu Yang's words attracted the attention of the young valley master of the Medicine Valley. He was also startled and suddenly asked, "You know each other?" Chu Yang coughed twice and said, "Something's not right." The young valley master was stunned again. Then, he pondered and moved closer. Ling Hanwu couldn't help but want to avoid him. The young valley master shouted, "Don't move!" He circled around Ling Hanwu and muttered curses. "There's indeed something fishy going on." Returning to his original position, he shouted, "Ling Hanwu of the Ling clan, come out!" Ling Hanwu answered and stepped out. The young valley master stepped forward with a solemn face and tore off Ling Hanwu's face. What appeared behind the mask was actually the image of another person. The high priest and second priest's faces darkened. What the hell was the Ling clan doing? How could they impersonate someone else in such a once-in-a-thousand-years ceremony? "Why is it you? Where's Ling Hanwu?" The high priest suppressed the anger in his heart. He asked in a low voice. This person was the candidate from the Ling clan to participate in the medicine banquet previously. He actually appeared again this time. That person stammered, "Second Master. Second Master, he was drunk yesterday and couldn't get out of bed." Chu Yang was speechless. There was actually such a thing? Was he drunk? This second Master Ling was indeed his teacher's rival in love. He actually got dead drunk at such a crucial moment. The high priest snorted heavily and shouted, "Ling Hanwu of the Ling clan is not here. Time is up, we can't wait any longer. Expel this person from the competition. The Ling family will be disqualified." Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the pharmacist from the Ling family was sent flying by a flurry of punches and kicks. The three from the Medicine Valley continued to curse in dissatisfaction. This was the first time something like this had happened in the past 10,000 years. He was drunk. Thinking of these 4 words, the 2 consecrators felt as if they had eaten a fly. Of course, that wasn't the case for the Ling family. Ling Hanwu of the Ling clan was indeed drunk, but the reason why he didn't come was not because he was drunk. Ling Hanwu had come to participate this time. It was just that he had snatched the spot. Their true motive wasn't the medicine banquet, but Yi Chuchen. If Ling Hanwu went on stage, he would definitely lose. However, the Dharma Supreme's request was to exclude Chu Yang. Ling Fengyun naturally couldn't bear to peel off the skin of his great-grandson's face and perform another soul transfer, so he randomly grabbed a pharmacist and performed the soul transfer technique to transfer the pharmacist's luck. He then used a human skin mask to create Ling Hanwu's face, and let the previous top pharmacist take his place in the competition. But things were after all too rushed. After all, this human skin mask wasn't as useful as directly using the soul transfer magic art as a living person. Although the Ling clan had put in a lot of effort, the medicine banquet only recognized the token and not the person. Once one entered, the roll call would be over. Who would have thought that Chu Yang would actually start talking to Ling Hanwu at this moment? Wasn't this purely being insensible? All the pharmacists of the medicine banquets. Who would chat with each other? Were they asking you to compete? Or were they asking you to chat? But it was Minister Chu's first time participating, and no one had reminded him about the things to take note of. Greeting an acquaintance was a natural etiquette. Who would have thought that this call actually eliminated the Ling clan? Such a lucky hit really made one not know whether to laugh or cry. When the pharmacist from the Ling clan left, his gaze was as if he wanted to swallow Chu Yang alive. Outside, the people from the big clans gathered in a group. A few of them were watching, and when they saw that the Ling clan was actually chased out, everyone's expression was very interesting. The supreme martial artist from the Ling clan who was in charge here was even more gloomy. Yi Shiyu from the Yi clan twisted his butt and said sarcastically, "This is really strange. The Ling clan, hee. How are we going to explain this matter?" The supreme martial artist from the Ling clan was ashen. The Dharma Supreme had personally arranged it, but the Ling clan had sent an impostor. How were they going to explain this matter to the Dharma Supreme? When that person came out and asked, he found out that this matter was actually ruined by Chu Yang again. For a moment, he couldn't help but grit his teeth so hard that they almost shattered. This jinx. Ever since the Ling clan met him on the road, nothing good had happened to them. Inside, the names were called. The high priest gave a few instructions, and then the people from the Medicine Valley walked in with trays one by one. A tray was placed in front of everyone. Then, an unlit incense stick was placed in front of everyone. When Chu Yang saw this, his heart couldn't help but skip a beat. Although the amount of medicine on this tray wasn't large, there were many types. In addition, there were extremely cold items, extremely in items, extremely hot items, extremely poisonous items, extremely nourishing items. There were a total of 30 types of medicine, but basically all of them had conflicting medicinal properties. Using such things to refine medicine, perhaps, just mixing 2 of them together would be enough to poison a person to death. Next, I will announce the rules of the competition. The high priest looked at the people in front of him and said, "As you can see, there are 30 types of medicine, taken from various extremes in the world. Each type is only enough to refine 1 pill. Your task is to refine all of these medicines within the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn out. The requirement is to use 2 conflicting types of medicine to refine medicine. The minimum required is 5 great nourishing pills and 5 extremely poisonous pills. This is the minimum requirement. Whoever can refine the most will have the purer medicinal properties. Whoever can refine the most will win. This competition will be ranked from the top to the bottom. Only the top 10 will be chosen. Those who use the wrong medicine will be automatically eliminated. Before the incense stick burns out, those who don't complete the task will be automatically eliminated. 5 great nourishing pills and 5 extremely poisonous pills. Those who don't complete the task will be automatically eliminated. Destroy any of the materials. Automatically eliminated. Those who use any means to disturb others in refining medicine will be automatically eliminated. Those who use any external help will be automatically eliminated. A series of automatic eliminations was announced. Even Chu Jiang was a little scared. These requirements were really too harsh. They had to use medicine with completely conflicting medicinal properties within the stipulated time. To complete all of this, conflicting medicinal properties. How to adjust? Once the adjustment was not done properly, the furnace would explode and the body would be injured. The medicine would be completely destroyed. The degree of refinement was equivalent to walking on a tightrope on a high cliff. Furthermore, it had to be done at least 15 times. For a moment, all the pharmacists looked at each other. Chu Yang suddenly felt that the pharmacists from the big clans. It seemed that there was no accident. Furthermore, their eyes didn't even move. Could it be that they cheated? Chu Yang's thoughts flashed. Could it be that they knew the competition's topic in advance? That they were prepared? Looking at the calm expressions of the 7 or 8 people, the more Chu Yang thought about it, the more he felt that his conjecture was really too reasonable. He couldn't help but grit his teeth. Damn it, do you think I can't cheat? At this moment, the high priest shouted, Now, light the incense stick! Begin immediately! The pharmacist who had brought the tray over had been standing in front of everyone all along. Now that they heard the order, they immediately went forward. After lighting the incense stick, they immediately retreated silently and left the competition grounds. The high priest and the other 2 also retreated as light as feathers. They retreated until they were 300 feet away and looked over. All the pharmacists immediately got busy. Picking the herbs, extracting their essences, mixing them immediately, adjusting the furnace, observing the temperature. Only young Master Chu stood there like a wooden chicken, not moving at all. The pharmacists from the big clans looked at this dazed fellow who was obviously at a loss because of these rules. They couldn't help but gloat. Damn it, he had never experienced such a situation before. For a rookie who had just participated in the medicine banquet for the first time, he actually had to give up his life. What an injustice. Although the clans had promised that their descendants and relatives would be taken care of tenfold in the future and be the first to enter the Hall of Elites. But, to die just like that, everyone still felt uncomfortable in their hearts. Who wanted to die? Even if it was someone whose wife was stolen or he was castrated, the thought of dying would only appear in the first few days or months. Once this period of time passed, they would get used to living on. No one wanted to die in this world. Especially to die for such a dazed fool, they were even more unwilling. As they cursed in their hearts, their hands kept moving. At this moment, no one dared to fall behind. Because if they couldn't complete the mission, not only would they die, their clan's preferential treatment would also be revoked. On the other side, young Master Chu was still as dazed as a wooden chicken, not moving at all. No one knew that this Sword Master Chu's divine senses had already sunk into his consciousness space at this moment. He called out, Sword Spirit, it's your turn! They are all cheating, let's cheat too. The Sword Spirit rolled his eyes and said, It's obvious that you can't do this at all. Even if they don't cheat, you still have to cheat. Why are you acting so righteous now? Chu Jiang said calmly. Of course, cheating is something that must be done no matter what. But since they are also cheating, then it's even more reasonable for us to be righteous. The Sword Spirit let out a long sigh. Cheating. He can even do it so righteously. This Sword Master is really different from the rest. Left with no choice, the Sword Spirit could only step forward. Chu Yang's body trembled slightly. This degree was just a very normal slight tremble. But no one knew that this body was no longer under the control of young Master Chu himself. Instead, it had been replaced by a 100,000-year-old monster. As for young Master Chu himself, of course, he comfortably soaked in the soul-tempering pool and took a bath. He muttered to himself, Isn't it just cheating? What's the big deal? This Sword Master is just about to take a rest. What I want is the heaven-nourishing jade, not the competition. Chapter 1073. Half of the incense stick was already burnt. Chu Yang was still motionless. He was still standing there, looking at the herbs in front of him without moving. As if he was having a headache, as if he was thinking, as if, in any case, he was not moving. The young valley master frowned and looked at Chu Yang. In the end, Chu Yang had given so many herbs to the medicine valley to make up for his mistake. He really had a good impression of Chu Yang. At this moment, seeing that Chu Yang was not moving, he could not help but feel anxious for him. What the hell? The young valley master muttered to himself. Are you going to be eliminated here? The high priest and the second priest also knew this person who seemed to have endless elixirs in his hands. At this moment, they were also surprised. What's wrong with this guy? I don't know. Has he never done such a thing before? It's possible. Time is running out, sigh. Maybe he's lost his mind. This is the first time, it's inevitable. The two of them sighed. Seeing that half of the incense stick was already burnt, they sighed at the same time. At this moment, even if Chu Yang started to move immediately, it would definitely be too late. To do such a thing in such a short time, even the two of them would definitely not be able to do it. What a pity. Bang! Suddenly, the medicinal cauldron in front of an alchemist exploded into pieces. Following which, the alchemist sighed sadly. He took a good look at the charred medicine in front of him and silently retreated. This explosion seemed to have activated a mysterious curse. Instantly, the sound of explosions rang out continuously. One by one, the pharmacists retreated. Suddenly, it seemed a little sparse. More than half of it will be burned soon. The high priest looked at Chu Yang regretfully and said, I'm afraid he has no chance. Let's look at the others. The second priest agreed. Just as he was about to turn his head, he suddenly exclaimed softly and widened his eyes. He moved. He moved. He actually only moved at this moment. Oh my God! If Chu Yang had only moved, the second priest would not be so surprised. The problem was that now, even if the high priest and the second priest worked together, they would not be able to finish this in time. Chu Yang suddenly moved. How could this not be shocking? Was he trying to make a final struggle? The high consecrator said uninterestedly. If he moves, he will lose for sure. He subconsciously turned his head to take a look. Immediately, he sucked in a breath of cold air and was stunned. The wrinkles on his face smoothed out, and his snow-white beard spread out in all directions. The second consecrator had never heard such a sentence from his mouth for hundreds of years. Fuck his grandfather. So fast. However, at this moment, the second high priest couldn't care less about being shocked by the head high priest's foul language. He was staring at Chu Yang's movements. Chu Yang was silent when he was still, but when he moved, he was like a thunderbolt. With a wave of his hand, the 30 herbs were neatly divided into 15 portions. It was incomparably nimble, and the medicinal properties were incomparably conflicting. Both of them were the two herbs with the most intense collision. Then, he slapped the medicine furnace with his right palm. Suddenly, a green flame spurted out from the medicine furnace. His left hand picked up 2 kinds of herbs and threw them into the medicine furnace. He actually didn't use the essence treatment. The second consecrator groaned. Wrong! When his herbs flew into the medicine furnace, the dregs flew out automatically. The high consecrator's eyes were sharper. There's such a miraculous method! The second consecrator murmured. In this way, won't he save the time needed to extract the essence? That's right. Next, let's see if he can create a miracle and finish refining all the herbs in the obviously insufficient time. The high consecrator pondered. At this moment, Chu Yang slapped the medicine furnace again, and the flames surged again. The flames turned into a blazing white color. This will completely destroy the herbs. The young valley master was obviously also paying attention to Chu Yang. At this moment he murmured. However, his voice hadn't faded when he saw Chu Yang pat the medicine stove. 2 pills flew out, and fell into the empty tray that had originally been filled with medicine. Then, with a flip of his hand, another 2 herbs flew into the medicine furnace. The dregs of the herbs flew out automatically the moment they flew into the medicine furnace. The flames surged again. He actually refined 2 pills in one go. The second consecrator felt as if he was dreaming. When I participated in the medicine banquet back then, in this round, I only refined 1 pill for every 2 herbs that collided. Me too. The high consecrator stared blankly. So impressive. The second consecrator murmured. Indeed impressive. The high consecrator muttered as he stroked his white beard. Almost instantly, the flames under Chu Yang's medicine furnace changed colors a few times like a rainbow. He slapped the medicine furnace. Instantly, another 2 pills were shaken out and landed in the tray. When the pills came out, the 2 herbs also entered the medicine furnace at the same time. 1 came out and 1 went in. The connection was seamless. Another 2, another 2, another 2. In a row, 20 pills had been refined. Chu Yang only had 4 sets of herbs left. It's indeed amazing. However, he wasted too much time in the beginning. At this moment, with his speed, he can only refine 2 more batches at most. It's already too late for him to refine all the herbs. According to the rules of the medicine banquet, he's still lost. What a pity, what a pity! The high consecrator looked at the incense that was about to burn to its end and sighed deeply. Such a talent, yet so careless. Sigh. What can I say? The second consecrator also sighed dejectedly. Even I want to change the rules for him. The high consecrator sighed. The rules can't be changed. It's just that this bastard is too pitiful. At this moment, the pharmacists from the other 7 big clans had already finished refining the herbs. They stood up, panting heavily as they sized up the others. There were 7 to 8 people who also stood up. Everyone was sweating profusely. With such a short period of time and such an important task, they really couldn't spare any attention. Only now did they have the time to look at the results of others. Then, they all looked at Chu Yang at the same time. Chu Yang was the most important enemy in the medicine banquet this time. Everyone was startled when they looked at the tray in front of Chu Yang. There were 20 pills on the tray in front of Chu Yang. Everyone sucked in a breath of air. The most they had was only 15 pills. This guy actually refined 20 pills? But when they took another look, they immediately felt relieved. This guy actually had 4 more herbs that he hadn't refined yet. The incense was about to burn to its end. He still had to take out the herbs in the furnace and refine them. There wasn't enough time. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Damn it, what's the use of having good skills? According to the rules, you still lost. The task given by the clans was finally completed in the second round. Boom! The pharmacist from the law enforcement officers in the north was originally about to finish refining, but when everyone turned to look at Chu Yang, he couldn't help but take a look as well. This look was a tragedy. When he saw Chu Yang's skillful movements and those 20 pills, he was instantly shocked. Then, when he saw that there were still 4 more herbs in front of Chu Yang, he was instantly overjoyed. Shock followed by joy. His emotions were stirred up and he didn't control the flames well. The 2 medicinal properties clashed violently in the furnace. As the flames burned, the furnace actually exploded with a bang. The last pill actually exploded. This pharmacist wanted to cry but had no tears. Oh my God, how did this happen? At this moment, this pharmacist almost wanted to commit suicide, but then, he felt comforted. Anyway, this Chu Yang is done for. With him being eliminated with me, it's not embarrassing. With this thought, he actually felt at ease. Under everyone's gaze, Chu Yang stretched out his hand and clapped. Another 2 crystal clear pills flew out from the furnace and landed in his hand. There was only a little bit of the green thread left. It was about to burn to its end. This little bit of time was only enough to refine 1 furnace. But Chu Yang still had 4 more furnaces to refine. At this moment, even if a deity came, there was absolutely no hope. The high priest and the other 2 heaved a sigh of pity at the same time. Such a prodigy was ultimately not fated to be number 1 in the world. The next moment, everyone's eyes widened at the same time. At the same time that those 2 crystal clear pills landed in Chu Yang's palm, Chu Yang slapped the platform. With a bang, the four matched herbs flew up together. Under everyone's incredulous gazes, they entered the furnace at the same time. Then, Chu Yang slapped the furnace. The flames suddenly blazed and burned fiercely. They turned greenish-white and emitted the hissing sound of the flames burning fiercely. He actually wanted to refine 4 different herbs with completely conflicting medicinal properties at the same time. This isn't a dream, right? All the pharmacists, the young valley master of the medicine valley and the 2 high priests on the street also opened their mouths wide and rubbed their eyes with their hands. This was simply unbelievable. Among the big clans, a few pharmacists snorted. Playing to the gallery. He knew that it was already too late, yet he purposely came up with such a super difficult move. Was he trying to leave himself a way out? But no matter how you leave yourself a way out, you lost. You lost. This, no one could change. The next moment. Bang, 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 bang. Chu Yang's right hand slapped the furnace continuously 4 times. In the first slap, the flames suddenly turned red and rushed straight up. On the second palm strike, the flames turned blue and illuminated Chu Yang's face, making it look like a sea of blue. In the third slap, the flames suddenly changed. With a series of hissing sounds, they returned to white. In the fourth slap, the flames turned into the color of the night with a whoosh. It was not as fierce as before, but was burning gently. Chu Yang's hand slapped the furnace again. In an instant, the flames were like a rainbow, constantly changing colors. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, purple, all kinds of colors were constantly changing like a revolving lantern. In the blink of an eye, it had actually changed hundreds of times. Time's up! The young valley master sighed and raised the hammer in his hand, ready to strike. The incense stick had burned to the end. There was only a last bit of light left. The next moment, it would be extinguished. Bang! Bang! The sound of Chu Yang's palm hitting the furnace and the sound of the young valley master's hammer hitting the furnace rang out at the same time. It was as if they had discussed beforehand. Time's up! The moment the young valley master shouted this loudly, 8 glittering and translucent pills of different colors flew out of the furnace and fell into Chu Yang's hand. They were emitting different smells and colors. Not one more, not one less. Before the young valley master's announcement had even ended, Chu Yang had already finished. Chapter 1074. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped. Only 8 elixirs fell from Chu Yang's hand onto the metal tray and spun around. A total of 30 elixirs were in the tray. Every one of them was perfectly round and had a faint layer of elixir halo around them. There were all kinds of colors and rich scents. When the crowd saw this scene, they were all stunned. No one had expected that Chu Yang would really accomplish such an unbelievable and completely impossible thing. He really completed it. The second priest and the high priest looked at each other and saw the strong disbelief in each other's eyes. Everyone present was knowledgeable. Which one of them wasn't an expert? How could they not know that such a level of difficulty was as difficult as ascending to the heavens? 8 types of medicinal herbs were mixed in pairs. To refine a single cauldron required precise control and rich experience in refining elixirs. Any cauldron would explode. If 2 types were refined at the same time, even the high priest only had a small chance of success. As for refining 3 types at the same time, the high priest didn't even dare to think about it. But Chu Yang actually refined 4 types at the same time. Without any confusion. Just by looking at the color, halo, roundness, and smell of the elixirs, one could tell that there was no need to test at all. This was a supreme-grade elixir. Refining 8 types of medicinal herbs at the same time and refining different types of elixirs in one cauldron. This was simply a miraculous skill. The few people from the 7 superclans all looked as if their parents had died. They couldn't be blamed for being depressed. These people, including the other 3 doctors from the law enforcement officers, had already gone through the medicine banquet once. This time, it was a walk in the park for them. It wasn't difficult to do this. They passed the previous time. How could they be eliminated this time? But what made them depressed was that they had already gone through it once. This time, Chu Yang gave them half the time, but they still couldn't compare to him. Not only was the quality far worse than Chu Yang's, even the quantity was actually twice as good. How could these proud and arrogant pharmacists accept this? The high priest and the second priest immediately instructed people to count the results of all the pharmacists. The results were as expected. Chu Yang was ranked first. Whether it was the medicinal properties, the quantity, the effect, or the purity of the medicinal herbs, he deserved to be ranked first. Furthermore, he had used the least amount of time, and the techniques he had displayed were even more dazzling and breathtaking. First place, Chu Yang. He used the time it takes for an incense stick to burn and used 15 poisonous pills. Each pill was enough to poison a monarch-level expert to death. 15 great tonic pills. Each pill could increase one's cultivation by 10 years, strengthen one's body, and strengthen one's foundation. Because of the quality of the poison, it was already very impressive for Chu Yang to be able to poison a monarch-level expert to death. The poison pills refined by the other people were also frighteningly poisonous. However, the most potent poison of them could only kill an emperor-level expert. Moreover, even though Chu Yang had only used half an incense stick's worth of time, he had used up the entire incense stick's worth of time. Therefore, the time was still counted as one incense stick. However, everyone knew clearly that Chu Yang had only used half an incense stick's time to get first place. Twice the time, several times the results. Although everyone was uncomfortable with Chu Yang being the first to pass, they had no choice but to accept it wholeheartedly. Second place, Shao Clan's pharmacist, Shao Xing. Then Yi Clan's pharmacist, Shi Clan's pharmacist, Lan Clan's pharmacist, Shuga Clan's pharmacist, Qin Clan's pharmacist, Law Enforcement City's pharmacist, West Law Enforcement Department's pharmacist. Top 10. The name list was out. The sword spirit had already returned to the tribulation space. For an old monster like him, such a small matter couldn't be any simpler. Chu Yang's consciousness returned to his body. He shook his neck, stretched, and rubbed his eyes. Seeing that everyone was staring at him in shock, he chuckled. That's it. So fast. I feel like I'm done before I even did anything. This was the truth, absolutely from the bottom of his heart. He didn't do anything in the first place. However, in the ears of the others, the trace of admiration that had just arisen suddenly turned into monstrous anger in an instant. You're done before you even did anything? What nonsense are you talking about? Your hand had turned into a shadow just now. Could it be that what's on your wrist isn't a hand? Is it a hoof? Motherfucker, I've never seen such a smug person. Everyone could tolerate someone who pretended to be obedient after receiving benefits. But they couldn't be like you, right? The head high priest's face twitched as he walked over enthusiastically. Brother Chu is truly a promising young man. Just now, when you were refining pills, this old man's horizons were truly broadened. Chu Yang said modestly. I'm ashamed, the high priest is too kind. I didn't prepare in advance and rushed into the battle, so I didn't perform at my best and almost messed it up. I'm ashamed. How can I deserve such high praise from the high priest? This was also the truth. He really didn't prepare in advance. The sword spirit also didn't perform at his best. With the sword spirit's strength, he could throw in 30 herbs at the same time and refine 30 different types of elixirs. However, this statement of truth was like a cannon fired across the entire map, completely offending all the number 1 pharmacists present. The high priest and the second priest opened their mouths, but didn't know what to say. This little guy is too arrogant. If you didn't perform at your best, we're already far inferior. If you perform at your best, we'll all seal our own cultivation and jump off the building. He coughed a few times and announced the name list. Then, he gave each of the 10 people who passed the semi-finals a different card. This card was the proof of the finals. This time, when the names were engraved, Chu Yang stared at it with wide eyes. Please don't engrave it as Lin Ri again. That would really be fucked. Then, the Medicine Valley used a special communication tool to announce the results of the semi-finals. countless people's jaws dropped at Chu Yang's first place. The finals would be held in a month's time. Chu Yang is first. In the temporary headquarters of the Law Enforcement Department, when the Dharma Supreme heard this, he smiled bitterly and murmured, "Is the legacy of the medical saint so powerful?" Then, he immediately ordered, "The Ling clan is only pretending to be obedient. Let Ling Fengyin give me an explanation himself." Then, he said, "Send a copy of Chu Yang's true identity to each of the super clans." Someone from the Shadow clan agreed and quickly took action. The Dharma Supreme took 2 steps with his hands behind his back. His eyes were deep as he murmured, "I can't see through it, but he can't see through it too? It's good that he came earlier." The Dharma Supreme's eyes flashed, as if he had made up his mind. He shook his head lightly and smiled lightly. "What a headache!" Then, with a flash of his body, he slowly disappeared from this space. Disappeared without a trace. While Chu Yan was competing, the Orchard Palace was in full swing. Dong Wushang's black saber displayed great power, suppressing the joint attack of Rui Badong and Mo Leia. Zi Xieching watched for a long time and finally said, "Brother Yu, go and feed that little guy. Just don't kill him." Yulin Xue obeyed and went up against Dong Wushang. This time, it was Dong Wushang's turn to be extremely aggrieved. He turned from an awe-inspiring figure into a punching bag. He was battered and exhausted. However, Dong Wushang had a heroic and ruthless spirit. The more he was defeated, the braver he became. His black saber seemed to have the help of the gods. Every time he was defeated, he would charge forward. Yulin Xue was so bored that his legs were uncomfortable, so he immediately started a round of torture. Feng Yuro, on the other hand, was feeding Rui Batong and Mo Leia moves and sparring. There were some differences over there. Rui Batong was naturally still a punching bag, but Mo Leia was slightly more relaxed. Mo Qingwu was not idle either. She was practicing. Now, the one feeding Mo Qingwu was Wu Qianqian. Wu Qianqian and Mo Qingwu could be considered acquaintances. The two of them were very intimate together. Wu Qianqian's current cultivation was much higher than Mo Qingwu's. Feeding Mo Qingwu was a piece of cake for her. However, Wu Qianqian's master, Moon Breeze, was lectured by Zi Xieching. She pointed out that Wu Qianqian's foundation was far worse than Mo Qingwu's. It was far from the solid foundation that Ning Tianya and Bu Luqing had built for Mo Qingwu. Although Wu Qianqian's cultivation had been forcibly raised now, if she maintained such a foundation, her future development might not be good. Feng Yuro and Yulin Xue nodded. However, Zi Xieching's words made the couple very depressed. "With Qianqian's aptitude and the foundation that you guys have built, it's not a problem for her to collapse the sky and break the void. But, have you not thought about the future development? With such a weak foundation, how can she occupy a place in the heavenly imperial court where so many strong people are born? Wouldn't that be a waste of Qianqian's completely natural body of purine?" This sentence made Moon Breeze and Feng Yuro feel dizzy. It should be known that the two of them were also working hard for the ultimate goal of collapsing the sky and shattering the void. The foundation that they had laid for their disciple could completely surpass the two of them. The two of them had already wasted Neo Era's strength and sacrificed too much to achieve this. Now, from Zi Xieching's words, collapsing the sky and breaking the void was actually just the beginning. However, Zi Xieching's words also pointed out the value of Wu Qianqian's aptitude, a completely natural body of purine. This was different from the transformation that was made after birth. Also, even if she can't practice your Moon Breeze as one divine technique for now, you must teach her the incantation first, right? What if the two of you were plotted against by someone? Would it be lost? Zi Xieching's words made Moon Breeze and Feng Yuro smile bitterly. This big sister really dared to say anything. She didn't have any scruples. She directly said that if the two of them died, the divine technique would be lost. However, from these few days onwards, the two of them also stopped improving Wu Qianqian's cultivation. Instead, they focused on strengthening her foundation. Every day of training made Wu Qianqian miserable beyond words. However, Zi Xieching suddenly realized something special about Wu Qianqian. This lady, no matter how tough or tiring it was, she never made a sound. Sweat poured down like rain, and she was so tired that she vomited blood. However, her eyes were clear and she was still determined. This was almost the same as Chu Yang's. This kind of perseverance was amazing. Just at the moment when the Dharma Supreme's figure disappeared. The Dharma Supreme has left. In the orchard palace, Zi Xiecheng looked at the sky far away thoughtfully. She said lightly, "He actually left Tianji City at this time." Chapter 1075. Zi Xiecheng was in the orchard palace, but her divine senses had covered the entire Tianji city. After all, she was still worried about Chu Yang's competition and was constantly paying attention to the movements in the arena. As long as there was any abnormality, she would immediately tear through space and go over. Who would have thought that she would unintentionally detect the Dharma Supreme's departure? Buluqing was opposite her, watching Mo Qingwu practice each move, and said absent-mindedly, "He left, so be it. It's no big deal. There's basically no use for him to stay here." Zi Xiecheng frowned and said, "But he shouldn't have left at this time. There must be something important for him to leave at this time. And now, in Tianji City, only we are a threat to the Dharma Supreme. So if he left, I'm afraid it's to deal with us." Buluqing laughed and said, "However, I really don't believe that there's any power in this heavenly continent that can deal with us." Buluqing couldn't be blamed for being so confident. The Dharma Supreme was obviously not his match now, and there was also the Moonbreeze couple here. More importantly, there was also Zi Xiecheng, a super expert that even he himself couldn't compare to. Even if it was just Buluqing alone, he was confident that he could kill all of them. Moreover, there were so many super experts gathered here. Buluqing said conceitedly, "Don't worry. As long as the Dharma Supreme's brain isn't kicked by a donkey, he won't choose to deal with us at this time. No matter what, he'll have to try to take us down one by one after we separate. That's the only way, but he still has to consider if he can bear the consequences." Zi Xiecheng frowned and thought deeply. She nodded slowly and said, "That's right. Even if it's a siege, they only have the confidence to attack one person. If they encircle all of us at the same time, I'm afraid that all the forces in this heavenly continent won't be enough to stop us from escaping." Buluqing watched with satisfaction as Mo Qingwu's moves became more and more skillful. He chuckled and said nonchalantly, "Don't worry about them. Even if you leave, you don't have to care about them." Zi Xiecheng nodded lightly. Buluqing looked at the few young people who were practicing and said, "I have to say, Chu Yang has some foresight. Look at Dong Wushang's future achievements. I'm afraid he won't lose to old Ning." "Ning Tianya," Zi Xiecheng said lightly. "Not only that. This Wu Qianqian, Mo Qingwu, Chu Lur, Ray Butong, Mo Layer in the future. I'm afraid they will all surpass all of you. They will definitely be influential figures in the Heaven Imperial Court." Buluqing said in astonishment, "This Dong Wushang, Xiao Wu, Qian, and that layer, it's fine. But this Ray Butong, isn't his aptitude a little too ordinary? You actually think so highly of him?" Zi Xiecheng smiled and said telepathically, "You are mistaken, Ray Butong. This is a phoenix. 70% of the phoenix bloodline has been awakened." Buluqing's jaw dropped for a long time. Phoenix? There was actually a phoenix among Chu Yang's brothers. This matter was too unexpected. Buluqing had not felt such a shock for so many years. Today, he finally tasted it. She felt as if her heart had stopped beating. After a long while, he suddenly closed his mouth with a kacha sound. He almost bit his tongue. Then, he hurriedly transmitted his voice. "I heard that dragons and phoenixes are closely related. If that's the case, then there must be a golden dragon among Chu Yang's brothers?" Zi Xiecheng nodded deeply. "Not only that. Chu Yang also has the spiritual spring water. If the spiritual spring water is further improved, it will become the most precious treasure of the fairy clan, the spring of life." Buluqing bit his tongue and muttered, "Could it be that this guy has gathered all the big clans that had disappeared?" Xi Xiecheng smiled lightly. I heard that one of Chu Yang's junior brothers is the reincarnation of the king of the 3 Stars divine clan. Bu Liuqing's face turned ashen. He was directly shocked by this news. He stared for a long time without saying anything. After a long time, he curled his tongue and said, "The world is going to change." Only then did he realize that Xi Xiecheng had already left. With a bang, the door of Chu Le's room suddenly exploded. Then Chu Le rushed out with a whoosh. Everyone exclaimed, "She actually has such a speed when she has just started cultivating." But then, bam! Chu Le's petite body crashed into the rockery. With a loud boom, a large piece of the rockery was knocked down. Stone chips flew everywhere. Everyone was dumbfounded. Then, the little girl stood up and wiped her face. With a wave of her hand, the rockery collapsed with a crash. "What's going on?" The little girl anxiously stomped her foot. With a loud bang, the ground shook. A hole the size of her foot clearly appeared under her feet. It was so dark that she didn't know how deep it was. In the next moment, a fountain gushed out of the hole with a puff sound. The little girl was standing there, dumbfounded. She couldn't dodge in time and was instantly drenched. Ha! And Mo Qingwu held her stomach and laughed. It was so funny. Since the little girl came out, there had been a series of embarrassing things. She had never seen a fountain that came out of her foot and actually drenched her whole body. Dong Wushang and the others couldn't help but smile. Bu Liuqing and Moon Breeze were stunned. The 3 of them knew the pros and cons of this. This kind of cultivation was at least at the saint level, right? 3 days ago, she was still nothing. Now, she had suddenly reached the saint level in a single bound? This, so fast? Even a deity wouldn't be able to do it so quickly, right? What was a meteoric rise? At this moment, the 3 of them truly understood the true meaning of these 4 words. Of course, the 3 of them also knew that this was because Chu Le really didn't have the slightest bit of confidence. Now that she suddenly had such great power, she didn't know how to restrain it. It was precisely because of this that it was even more shocking. "Le, how is it?" Xi Xiecheng smiled and asked. "Does your body feel relaxed?" Chu Le frowned and checked her whole body. She suddenly realized that the suffocation in her chest had disappeared without a trace. The top of her head, which was originally a forbidden area, was also extremely refreshing now. It was as if her whole body had been broken and reassembled. There was a sense of freshness and relaxation everywhere. I've recovered?" Chu Le looked at her hand in disbelief. She pinched her arm hard and cried out in pain, but her eyes were immediately filled with tears of joy. "You've recovered! This time, you've completely recovered. I don't have to worry about your illness anymore." Xi Xiecheng laughed and said, "You little girl, you've really put me through a lot of trouble. Wow! Wow! Big Brother Fan is really great." Chu Le raised her hands and cheered. "Big Brother has finally cured my illness. Long live Big Brother! Big Brother is the greatest, haha. Big Brother, my Big Brother." Xi Xiecheng's face was black and gloomy. The gentle smile on her face also froze on her face. "Little girl, I've spent so much effort to completely cure you, and even paved the way for your future and laid a solid foundation for you. I've completely changed your physique, condensed your spirit, expanded your consciousness as much as possible, built your meridians into an existence that even people in the heavenly imperial court would be jealous of, and turned your dantian directly into a bottomless pit. You actually didn't even mention me. Once you heard that I've recovered, you only thanked your big brother. Other than your big brother, no one else actually got it. This was really intolerable." "Only your big brother is good?" Xi Xiecheng said with a black face. Chu Le's eyes turned and she threw herself into her arms. She said coquettishly, "Sister-in-law is good too. Hee hee." Xi Xiecheng's face instantly turned red. She said angrily, "Who's your sister-in-law? Hurry up and practice your martial arts to familiarize yourself with your strength." And Mo Qingwu rubbed her palms and jumped over. "Lure, little girl. Your sister-in-law is here. Come, let me teach you a lesson. I'll spar with you. You're not even fully grown and you actually want to be my sister-in-law. Chu snorted. I'm just about to teach you a lesson. When enemies met, their eyes would be exceptionally red. In an instant, punches and kicks were exchanged and the two little girls were entangled in a tussle. How could Chu, who had just recovered and was not familiar with her strength, be a match for Mo Qingwu, who was skilled in martial arts? Once they started fighting, she was instantly at a disadvantage. Buluqing wanted to go forward and stop them, but was held back by Zhiqiang. Only the method of exerting strength that she figured out herself is her nature. At this moment, don't stop them. Just let them fight. After this round, teach Lure the method of exerting strength and controlling her strength. Only then can it be imprinted in her mind and she won't forget it. When Chu Yang returned, he saw that the orchard palace was filled with dust. The two little girls were yelling and fighting in a fight. He couldn't help but be stunned. What's going on? Buluqing snorted and turned his head away, not saying a word. His own disciple wanted to be this concubine. He really couldn't stand the sight of him. Zhiqiang snorted. Her face was as cold as ice and she ignored him. Chu Yang rubbed his hands, coughed twice, and said, "Number 1! I'm number 1! No one bothered with him. In the bathroom, Minister Chu walked over to the side of the two little girls to watch the fight. In the next few days, everyone was busy practicing martial arts. Under Zhiqiang's guidance, Chu Lure's improvement was like 1,000 miles per day. Chu Yang also finally took out the guide to the world of poisons that had been completed by the sword spirit. Chu Lure seemed to be very interested in all kinds of poisons. These few days, she studied eagerly. Every day, she only had a little time to practice martial arts and meditate. Half of her time was spent on studying the guide to the world of poisons, sparring with Mo Qingwu, sparring with Wu Qianqian, sparring with Dong Wushang. Her days were very fulfilling. But these few days, Tianji City was peaceful. It was as quiet as a pool of stagnant water, without the slightest ripple. This kind of calmness was unusually scary. There was a kind of pressure that seemed to be slowly approaching, like a storm was coming. It was different from Buluqing and the rest who didn't care. Chu Yang suddenly remembered Wu Qingrou's reminder after the auction that day. Chapter 1076. This strange silence reminded Chu Yang of Wu Qingrou's reminder. During the medicine banquet, the competition would be fierce every time. There were many underhanded schemes, but this time, it was so peaceful. It was as if the big clans suddenly remembered the 10,000 years of friendship between them and started to treat each other respectfully. And the previous grievances seemed to have completely disappeared. Such a situation should never happen. It was absolutely illogical. Behind the calmness, there must be turbulent waves. Chu Yang's 2 lifetimes of experience told him that this situation was strange. The big clans and the law enforcers must have other plans. And Wu Qingrou's reminder was definitely not without reason. It must be known that Wu Qingrou was taking a huge risk by standing up and reminding him in that kind of situation. But even so, Wu Qingrou still reminded him. That meant that Wu Qingrou must think that there was danger. And this danger was related to Chu Yang's safety. And Chu Yang's safety was related to the big plan of the Wu clan. So even though it was risky, Wu Qingrou still stood up and said such a sentence. Now Chu Yang had the same feeling as Wu Qingrou, danger. It's as if I've changed my identity after some planning. I've completely driven away the identity of the Master of Calamity Sword from me. I've changed my appearance, and can openly develop in the upper 3 heavens. It was a good thing that he had changed his identity from the dark to the light. But the price he had to pay was that he would have to face the suppression of the big clans openly. And the conflicts between the big clans would turn into secret lines. If they were not seriously provoked, they would not erupt for the time being. Chu Yang had been prepared for such a situation. But Chu Yang suddenly woke up at this moment. He hadn't expected that the first crisis he was about to face would be his friends. and they were all extremely stubborn. Because of Zi Xueqing's unparalleled cultivation, Chu Yang had always overlooked this crisis. But now, this strange silence made Chu Yang realize something. He couldn't help but ask himself, if I were a big clan, what would happen? If I were the Dharma Supreme, what would happen? Chu Yang was deep in thought. It was already late at night. He sat alone on the roof, looking at the gloomy, gray, and cold night sky. He felt that his mind was unprecedentedly clear. Sword Spirit, I need you to help me clear up my doubts and straighten out my thoughts, Chu Yang said softly. What's the matter? The Sword Spirit asked. I'm also puzzled about something. I was just about to discuss it with you. Chu Yang was startled. What's the matter? The Sword Spirit said in a low voice. The sword force of Calamity Sword is clearly in Tianji City. It has been found in the same place for tens of thousands of years. Why is there no reaction this time? The Sword Spirit frowned. This shouldn't be the case. In the past, so long as we came to this area, the Astral Sword would sense our arrival and the call of the Calamity Sword. I could clearly sense the location of the Astral Sword as well. However, it didn't happen this time. I originally thought that it was because the Zhuge clan had concealed the secrets of the heavens, but now it seems that the Zhuge clan clearly didn't make any effort in this aspect. What's the reason for this? Chu Yang pondered and said. Then, could it be that someone beat us to it? That's impossible. The Sword Spirit denied flatly. The Astral Sword of the Calamity Sword is involved in the operation of the heavens. Who could beat us to it? Even a supreme martial artist would definitely be killed by the backlash. And after this person dies, the Astral Sword will automatically return to its original position. Therefore, there is absolutely no possibility that the early bird will be the first to arrive. That might not be the case, Chu Yang said indifferently. Can one of the tribulations take in the Astral Sword? The Sword Spirit snorted and said, You mean the Dharma Supreme? Absolutely impossible. If he cultivated for another 10,000 years, he might be able to temporarily take in the Astral Sword for his own use. But now, it's absolutely impossible. It's impossible for the Dharma Supreme. Is it possible for Wu Jueqing? Chu Yang asked. Do the previous tribulations know of your existence? The Sword Spirit pondered for a moment. No. The existence of the Sword Spirit is a top secret that only the Master of the Calamity Sword knows. It's impossible for the other tribulations to know. In other words, they only know about the Calamity Sword but don't know that there's actually a Sword Spirit in the Calamity Sword. Chu Yang pondered. Yes. The Sword Spirit said. You mentioned Wu Jueqing just now. If Wu Jueqing, maybe there's a possibility, Chu Yang said solemnly. Then there should be no mistake. The Astral Sword must have fallen into Wu Jueqing's hands. The Sword Spirit sighed. If that's the case, we must retrieve it. The Astral Sword is an important part of the Calamity Sword's strength. A few days ago, Zi Xueqing already talked about the Heaven Imperial Court. Then I can tell you that the Astral Sword is extremely important in the Heaven Imperial Court. Chu Yang nodded. Every part of the Calamity Sword was important. Chu Yang felt more and more that the Calamity Sword contained an earth-shattering secret. It couldn't be missing any part. It was just that it was easier said than done to snatch the Astral Sword back from someone like Wu Jueqing. The Sword Spirit also fell silent. Wu Jueqing's whereabouts were unknown. It was difficult to find him, not to mention that his cultivation was already superb. Even if they found him, how could they retrieve the Astral Sword if he wasn't willing? If the Astral Sword was really lost in Wu Jueqing's hands, this matter would be extremely troublesome. What is it that you don't understand? The Sword Spirit changed the topic and asked. If you were the Dharma Supreme, or Yi Di and the rest of the big clans, what would you do? Chu Yang frowned and said. These few days have been very peaceful, but I keep having an ominous feeling in my heart. Ominous? The Sword Spirit smiled. How can the Dharma Supreme and the rest be a match for Zi Xueqing, Bulu Qing, Feng Yuro and Yu Lingxue? Don't worry, it'll be fine. No! Zhang said seriously. This is too presumptuous. If we can't afford to offend them, shouldn't we? If we can't afford to offend them, should we give up our current benefits? The sword spirit was stunned. Why should we? Isn't that courting death? Zhang said indifferently. If I were the Dharma Supreme and the others standing in their shoes, after seeing that Yang has such a powerful trump card and backing, I would be shocked, suspicious, in danger, and unable to eat or sleep. In this way, I'm thinking, with the support of these 4 people, what can Yang do? The rise of a new big force is inevitable. But now, the division of forces in the upper 3 heavens is very clear. A new force must snatch the original force. Moreover, the authority of the Dharma Supreme has also been seriously challenged. If Yang really rises, wouldn't it be telling the world that as long as you have the ability to make the Dharma Supreme give in, you can do the same? In that way, Yang's ability and reputation will be above the Dharma Supreme. And as the Dharma Supreme, he will definitely not tolerate such a thing. But now, he can't afford to offend us. But the more he can afford to offend us, the more he wants to get rid of us. Therefore, under such circumstances, he must think of a plan to get rid of all these people who threaten the authority of the upper 3 heavens. Yang frowned and said, The problem is, what method does he have to get rid of Zixieqing, Buluqing, Fengyuro and Yulingxue? Or is there any method in this upper 3 heavens continent to kill Zixieqing, Buluqing and the rest? The sword spirit pondered for a long time and shook his head. After thinking for another long time, he still shook his head and said, There is indeed no way. The sword spirit pondered. You see, if these 4 people don't move, they will definitely not dare to touch you. Because anyone with a discerning eye can see that Zixieqing is with you. She is Chule's teacher, and you are Chule's elder brother. Buluqing is here because Mo Qingwu likes you. For his disciple, Buluqing has no choice but to help you. The Moon Breeze couple is here because of Zixieqing, and also because Wu Qianqian is in love with you. Therefore, these few experts are all gathered together because of you. If you die, although these experts will be separated, the revenge of these people is not something even the Dharma Supreme can bear. Therefore, they will not deal with you, nor Mo Qingwu and the rest. They will directly cut off the source. If Zixieqing, Buluqing and the rest are all dead, although you, Mo Qingwu and Wu Qianqian have amazing potential, after all, you have not grown up yet. By then, a random bounty will be enough to kill you. Therefore, to deal with your rise, the only way is to kill Zixieqing first. After killing Zixieqing and Buluqing, your power will basically be gone. But as for how to kill these 2 people, that is something that I have no idea of. Not to mention Zixieqing, even if it is Buluqing, if he wants to escape, even if the first-generation elder master of the big clans, the Dharma Supreme and all the high officials and elders of the Dharma Supreme attack Buluqing and severely injure him, as long as Buluqing wants to escape, even if he is on his last breath, he can still escape at any time. This is the power of a peak 2nd-grade supreme martial artist. It can be defeated, but it is absolutely impossible to stop him from escaping. Therefore, your worries are completely unnecessary. The sword spirit concluded. No, Zhang said. What if we create a situation in advance where they are unable to retreat, and can only fight to the end? What kind of situation would make such a person unable to even retreat? Scruples? What scruples can there be? The sword spirit asked. If Mo Qingwu, Wu Qianqian and Chule are all controlled, in a place, before we are rescued, I am afraid they will not leave. Yang voiced out his biggest concern in a low voice. Chapter 1077. Such a thing should never happen. The sword spirit comforted him. Now that you have successfully cleared your suspicion of the Tribulation Sword Master, and the appearance of the Tribulation Sword Master is imminent, why would they waste so much effort on a sudden rise of power? Even if they could really do it, have you thought of the price they would have to pay? At least 700 supreme martial artists would die if they sent out 1,000. The sword spirit said. In this way, It would be equivalent to wiping out all the elites of the heavenly layer. Who could afford such a loss? If the Tribulation Sword Master were to attack at this time, would the big clans be at his mercy? Chu Yang frowned and said, "But I have a feeling that this is highly likely to happen." The sword spirit snorted. The sense of crisis in Chu Yang's heart grew stronger and stronger. He had first mentioned this to Zi Xieching, but Zi Xieching only smiled disdainfully. Before he could say anything to Buluqing pointed at the door and said, "Get out!" When he mentioned it to the Moon Breeze couple, they smiled reservedly, listened to him politely, and then sent him out politely. Now that he mentioned it to the sword spirit was still quoting the facts and reasoning, telling him that such a thing would never happen. Such a unanimous response still couldn't dispel Chu Yang's sense of crisis. Instead, because of their reactions, Chu Yang became more and more worried. His heart felt more and more oppressed. The more Zi Xieching, Buluqing and the rest didn't care, the more Chu Yang felt threatened. But he couldn't change the minds of these four people. There was nothing he could do. Chu Yang had a lot on his mind. Zi Xieching and the rest were different from Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing. If it were those few people, as long as Chu Yang mentioned it, even if it was impossible, Mo Tianji and the rest would do their best to guard against it. But these few people were all powerful people of the world. Every one of them was a figure that no one dared to challenge. After so many years, they had already cultivated a confidence that looked down on the world. Not to mention that there was no danger, even if there was really great danger, not only would these people not avoid it, they would even throw themselves into it to try. This was the conceit and pride that belonged to the top experts. It had nothing to do with personality. However, the thing that Chu Yang was most afraid of and worried about right now was precisely their pride as a powerhouse. Seeing that even the sword spirit didn't agree with his point of view, Chu Yang had no choice but to end the conversation. He let out a long sigh, and then called them Mo Qingwu, Chu Lur, Wu Qianqian, Dong Wishang, Rui Batong and the others. There is one thing that I want to warn you about. During this period of time, don't go out if you can. Even if you want to go out, Qingwu, you must not be more than 30 meters away from your master. Qianqian, you too. Lur, you must never leave Big Sister Zi's side. Wu Shang, the three of you don't have to worry about this for the time being. But you have to be careful and try not to go out. Chu Yang instructed with a heavy face. This was the best solution he could come up with. There was no other way. Moreover, this was the only way to kill Zi Xieching, Buluqing and Feng and you at the same time, after careful consideration by Chu Yang. Zi Xieching and Buluqing would never retreat before rescuing Chu Lur, Mo Qingwu and the others. They would make use of the special terrain, lay in ambush beforehand, use sneak attacks and various other methods to weaken their battle power. Finally, gather all the supreme martial artists of the heavens and besiege them. But as long as they didn't give them such a chance, even if they wanted to do so, they might not be able to do so. Chu Yang frowned and repeated this arrangement again with a heavy voice and a heavy face. The juniors all obeyed Chu Yang's instructions and agreed to it one after another. After the arrangements were made, Chu Yang was still a little worried. Diwu Qingrou's words were still echoing in his mind. The enemy's strength is far stronger than what you see. It was late at night and Chu Yang couldn't sleep. He put on his clothes and went to the flower rack, deep in thought. How strong exactly was the enemy's strength? A white shadow flashed and Zi Xieching appeared. Are you still racking your brains over your wild thoughts? Zi Xieching teased with a teasing smile. I'm definitely not wild imagination. Chu Yang said angrily. I'm worried for you. Do you know? Why do you always feel that there's no danger? Even if you're skilled and brave, this matter is really not a small matter. Zi Xieching smiled faintly and sat down in front of him. Her beautiful eyes narrowed slightly as she said, Back then, when I was in another continent, the overlord of that continent had a favorite son. He took a fancy to me and used all kinds of tricks. In a fit of anger, I killed him. After that, the entire continent mobilized thousands of experts to besiege me. Everywhere I went, there was a massacre. Guess what happened in the end? Xi Xiecheng winked at Chu Yang. What happened? Chu Yang asked weakly. Thousands of experts, none of them survived. The world's hegemony turned into dust. Xi Xiecheng said lightly. There were at least 5 experts who were above the Dharma Supreme now. Chu Yang said weakly. But can the two worlds be compared? You were alone then, but now you have worries in your heart. The heavens are mysterious and unpredictable, the law enforcement officers are unfathomable, and the big clans have a strong foundation. What makes you think that these people can't kill you? If they can kill me, it's their ability. If I'm killed, I can die without regrets. Xi Xiecheng said lightly. Suddenly, she turned her head and asked with a smile. Are you so concerned about whether I'll be killed or not? Why? Chu Yang was not in the mood to discuss this at all. He said casually. If you leave, I hope you leave safely. If you stay, I hope you stay safely. Whatever you want to do, I hope it's out of your own will. Even if you die, I hope it's a natural death. I don't want you to die. It's that simple. Chu Yang said lightly. There's no reason and no reason. Xi Xiecheng looked at him deeply and a gentle smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She lowered her eyebrows and said, I'll take note. Chu Yang sighed. But you're clearly trying to comfort me. You don't care about those people at all. You're only worried about what will happen after you leave. But you've never considered what kind of danger you'll face while you're here. You're too arrogant. As Chu Yang spoke, his anger rushed up. He said angrily, Why can't you listen to me? Woman, why are you so careless when it concerns your own safety? Xi Xiecheng smiled lightly and stood up. I'm going to sleep. Sleep my ass! Chu Yang was furious. Can you listen to me? Xi Xiecheng did not answer. She turned and left. Stop right there! Chu Yang was furious. But Xi Xiecheng's figure had already disappeared. Bang! Chu Yang kicked the stone table in front of him and scolded angrily and powerlessly. Bastard woman! What an unreasonable woman! Arrogant woman! Detestable woman! Detestable! Detestable! He scolded angrily and vented his anger. However, Xi Xiecheng did not come out to teach him a lesson. In the room, Xi Xiecheng stood in front of the window, looking up at the gloomy and cold sky. Her eyes were filled with gentleness. Her eyes were clear and there was a smile on her face. She stood there quietly, listening to Chu Yang's angry scolding. Her whole body was filled with gentleness. Chu Yang lay down weakly. He knew that he could not convince these people about this matter. If he wanted to avoid future developments, he could only rely on his own efforts to resolve it, or rather, to save it. But I don't have such great ability. Minister Chu was very upset. In the next few days, Chu Yang's demand for information increased. Nagong Shifeng and his brothers were also exhausted from running around. He spent his purple crystals and bought a bunch of information. What made Chu Yang depressed was that even this mysterious information purchasing place could not provide any information about the hidden forces of the big clans. As for Mo Qingwu, Chu Lur and Wu Qianqian, Chu Yang had also repeatedly reminded them over and over again these few days. Towards the end, even Wu Qianqian was a little surprised that Chu Yang was actually such a busybody. Do you have to harp on and on about the same thing over and over again? After another 5 days, it was still peaceful. However, Chu Yang's mouth actually had a ring of blisters. The most powerless thing in the world is knowing that something bad is going to happen, but being unable to stop it. Chu Yang looked up at the sky and sighed. Of course, during this period, Chu Yang did not forget to find out about Meng Chaoran. Chu Yang had long known that Meng Chaoran had also come to Tianji City. During this period, he had also been paying attention to the movements of Yi Chuchen and Ling Hanwu. However, he did not find any clues. It was as if Meng Chaoran was just a drop of water that had entered Tianji City and melted into the sea. As if there was no movement at all, Chu Yang's search was fruitless. He could not help but admire his master's superb concealment skills. In this world, there were not many who could hide from his all-out investigation, Ever since the Dharma Supreme left, there was no movement. Zhixiecheng kept a close watch but did not notice the Dharma Supreme's return. On this day, Chu Yang wrote a bunch of invitation cards. Dong Wushang personally went to deliver the invitation cards. Yi Shiyu from the Yi clan, Ling Hanwu from the Ling clan, Xiao Sansi from the Xiao clan, Meng Se from the Jia clan, Zhuge Changchang from the Zhuge clan, Shi Yinping from the Shi clan, Qin Feitian from the Qin clan. These were the few clans that were still in existence in the great clans. They were also the rising stars of the great clans in Tianji City. Chu Yang's motive was very simple. First, he would chat with these people and interact with them in the long run. Once he discovered any abnormalities, he would first take control of all these people and play a hostage against a hostage. An eye for an eye. Although he knew that these people were far from enough, it was the most powerful counterattack that Chu Yang could come up with at the moment. When Dong Wusheng returned, the news that he brought back made Chu Yang so angry that he smashed the stone table with his palm. No one was free. Every one of them was very polite, but every one of them was frighteningly busy. They said in unison, "After the medicine banquet, we will invite Brother Chu to have a good gathering." In short, they were not coming. Chapter 1078. The Diwu Clan. Diwu Qingru sat on a chair, facing a situation map in front of him, not saying a word. He had been studying this every day for the past few days, sitting in front of the table for the whole day. The heavenly secrets have been completely messed up. It's impossible to predict. Diwu Qingru sighed. He stared at the situation map in front of him, his brows deeply furrowed. After a long time, he still sighed helplessly. It's unsolvable. He smiled bitterly. Chu Yang must be having a splitting headache now. But the situation in front of us is truly unsolvable. Other than a violent breakthrough, there is no other way. This situation may seem simple, but it makes full use of the arrogance, conceit, and fame of top experts. The strength of Chu Yang's side is strong or weak. Thinking of this, Diwu Qingru's eyes lit up. He muttered to himself, "Actually, it's not unsolvable. Because there is still a huge variable that hasn't appeared here on this heavenly continent. That is Ning Tianya. If he goes, once it starts and Ning Tianya rushes over, this situation can be resolved. But will they consider Ning Tianya as a variable? Or will Ning Tianya be able to make it in time? With such a great gathering, logically speaking, Ning Tianya will definitely rush over. The heavenly secrets are in chaos." Diwu Qingru sighed deeply, frowning as he sat back in his chair, frowning and deep in thought. If Chu Yang is defeated here, the great plan of the Diwu clan will go up in smoke. But at present, Chu Yang's side doesn't have any hope of victory. Unless that mysterious woman's cultivation has really reached a level that can destroy half of the continent. In a faraway place. This was a mysterious place, shrouded in clouds and fog all year round. The black figure of the Dharma Supreme fluttered, appearing indifferently from this patch of clouds and fog. Behind him, there was a figure in the same black as ink. Fluttering, it was like a shadow of the Dharma Supreme, but the aura it exuded was even stronger than that of the Dharma Supreme, shocking everyone. "Brother Wu, this place is not bad, right?" The Dharma Supreme smiled lightly and said indifferently, "It's okay. In this place, using the formation to shield the secrets of the heavens can indeed prevent the heavenly punishment." The shadow said faintly, "When the heavenly punishment passes through here, it is weakened by 70%. Brother Wu, it can be said that you've been tested time and time again under heavenly punishment. I have never experienced heavenly punishment before. I would really like to know what it feels like." The Dharma Supreme smiled faintly. "If you don't want to leave this place now, you'd better not do that." The black-clothed figure's voice was slightly heavy as he said, "Once you survive the heavenly punishment, you must collapse the sky and shatter the void to enter that magical place. At that time, if you force yourself to stay, you will end up like me. However, you will have to endure heavenly lightning once every 100 years." The Dharma Supreme sighed and said, "Brother Wu's perseverance really takes my breath away. It's not perseverance. It's just that I haven't gotten my revenge yet. That black-clothed figure floated in the fog, and his voice was filled with deep hatred. He said, I, Wu Jueqing, swear that I will not ascend to the heavens until the Calamity Sword Master is destroyed. Dharma Supreme, I'll help you this time. Next time, I'll only act against the Calamity Sword Master. I'm already very grateful that Brother Wu can help me with this. The Dharma Supreme chuckled. It's hard to find an opponent. This mysterious woman has indeed piqued my curiosity and battle intent. This mysterious person was naturally Wu Jueqing, the descendant of Qin Feng. Two pitch-black eyes shot out from the dense black fog. Wu Jueqing said solemnly, My ancestors once warned me that in this world, there's a woman that I must never provoke. It's very possible that the woman you met is that woman. He chuckled. But in this world, is there anyone that I can't provoke? Can't provoke? If I wanted to leave, I would have left 10,000 years ago. I have already transcended this plane long ago. Could it be that this woman was also left behind after enduring countless heavenly punishment? Can't provoke. Since she has appeared, how can I not provoke her? The Dharma Supreme was silent for a moment before he said indifferently, This world is really lonely. Wu Jueqing was also silent for a moment. After a long while, he sighed sadly. Yes, this world is really lonely. As they spoke, the two of them had already walked out of the fog. Standing in the bleak landscape of mountains and rivers, Li Changshu stood there. The moment the Dharma Supreme appeared, countless pieces of mysterious information seemed to flow in from all directions and converge on him through a mysterious channel. A small round plate in front of his chest. The Dharma Supreme picked up the round plate and looked at it carefully. Smiling, he said, Brother Wu, looks like we have something to do immediately. The black fog was dense. Wu Jueqing asked disinterestedly, What is it? The variable is here. The Dharma Supreme smiled indifferently. I've told Brother Wu before that there's only one variable that has the ability to interfere with our grand plan. That is Ning Tianya. Before the plan starts, Ning Tianya cannot be in Tianji City. He smiled lightly. Currently, Ning Tianya has already left the place where he gathered herbs and has also received news about Tianji City. Right now, he's on his way. He turned back and looked at Wu Jueqing. And the first thing we have to do is to kill or injure Ning Tianya. Let him die. At the very least, we have to prevent him from reaching Tianji City. Ning Tianya? Wu Jueqing smiled slightly. That person who has been occupying the so-called number one expert in the world for a long time. Her. That's fine too. Let me use this person as a warm-up first. The Dharma Supreme smiled indifferently. From here on out, we should be able to block Ning Tianya for about 2,000 miles towards the north. Now that I think about it, Ning Tianya's expression must be very interesting when he suddenly sees the two of us blocking his way. The Dharma Supreme smiled lightly. Two people who should have disappeared for tens of thousands of years suddenly meeting Ning Tianya. This number one expert in the world is indeed impressive. Wu Jueqing smiled and said, Then, what are we waiting for? Laughing loudly, the two black-clothed figures disappeared without a trace. In another direction, Ning Tianya was speeding all the way. As he walked, he was cursing Buluqing in his mind. The few missions that this bastard gave him were simply torturous. Walking one round in all directions, now, he had already obtained the purple ore of vermilion fruit, the golden light lotus and 2 big bottles of purple whale blood essence, but he had not even touched the heavenly Tao tea and spirit comprehension grass. He was just about to set off to the Zhuge family to get their Tianyang purple Ganoderma when he heard that Buluqing and his disciple were now in Tianji City. This caused Ning Tianya to feel a little angry. What a bastard! He had brought his disciple out without a word. What if something happened to her? Tianji City was now filled with all kinds of people and experts. This Buluqing was really daring. Therefore, Ning Tianya continued to rush towards the south without stopping. Along the way, he also noticed that people were constantly paying attention to him, but he did not take it to heart at all. The number one expert in the world was renowned. Although he did not appear often, too many big clans had portraits of him. There were indeed many people who knew him. He was even more used to being noticed. So what if they noticed? Therefore, Supremacy Ning did not take it to heart. Traveling through the starry night, his speed was more than just fast. On this day, Ning Tianya rushed up a slope as fast as lightning. Instantly, he felt that something was not right. It was as if there were two powerful auras waiting for him in front. He could not help but be startled. Where did these two unparalleled experts come from in such a desolate place? Is that Ning Tianya in front? An indifferent voice came from the opposite mountain in front. I sincerely invite Brother Ning for a gathering, how about it? Ning Tianya laughed and said, So it is the Dharma Supreme. With a leap, he crossed a distance of several thousand feet with a swoosh. The next moment, he had already arrived at the opposite mountain. He laughed and said, Since the Dharma Supreme is waiting for me here, there must be something important. On the opposite side, a figure in black with his long hair hanging down loosely was standing quietly with his hands behind his back. Dressed in black, he was like a demon god in the dark night. Brother Ning is indeed bold. The Dharma Supreme smiled. I am here to spar with Brother Ning. Ning Tianya shook his head and laughed. Spar, but there is no need for an ambush. Dharma Supreme, that helper of yours, come out together. It is not an ambush. Ning Tianya, the one who wants to spar with you this time is me. Without a sound, a figure in black appeared several hundred feet behind Ning Tianya. Wu Jueqing had appeared. Who are you? Ning Tianya's pupils shrank. At this moment he felt that the aura of this person opposite him was actually higher than his. How could such a person appear in the double heavens continent? You should have heard of my name. Wu Jueqing's eyes were half closed. He said coldly, I am Wu Jueqing. Poison Dr. Wu Jueqing? Ning Tianya was extremely shocked. Tribulation, who had disappeared for tens of thousands of years, actually appeared in front of him now. Good knowledge. It has been tens of thousands of years, but the name Wu Jueqing has not disappeared from the world after all. Wu Jueqing's voice carried an inexplicable threat, an inexplicable hatred. Back then, the name Poison Dr. Wu Jueqing had made a name for himself when he was Tribulation. Now, where was his old brother from back then? Wu Jueqing suddenly felt very bleak. Following these words, the black fog around Wu Jueqing's body slowly dissipated, revealing his original appearance. He was dressed in a long black robe, calm and composed, with a handsome face and a slender figure. He had the appearance of a handsome man. Ning Tianya heaved a long sigh. So it is Lord Wu. Lord Wu has disappeared for tens of thousands of years, but suddenly appeared today to look for me. May I know what advice Lord Wu has for me? Chapter 1079. Kill me? Ning Tianya chuckled. Lord Yuanliang Wu hasn't come out for tens of thousands of years, and the moment she came out, it was to kill me. Suddenly, he thought of something. Frowning, he turned around and said, Lord Dharma Supreme must be planning to deal with my old brother? The Dharma Supreme said apologetically, Brother Ning, please forgive me. Your brother Buluqing is really a hindrance. Brother Ning's existence is also a variable that can affect the heavens. Therefore, for the sake of the great cause of the great heaven, Brother Ning and Brother Bu should go to the underworld to compete for the first place. Ning Tianya smiled indifferently. As long as Lord Dharma Supreme and Lord Wu have the capability, then it's no big deal for the two of us to go underground and compete for the #1 position in the world. Wu Jueqing said dispassionately, Brother Ning is indeed worthy of the title of #1 expert in the world. Are you so sure that I won't be able to kill you? Ning Tianya replied indifferently, If Lord Wu and Lord Dharma Supreme don't even care about face, then even if I don't want my life, it's nothing. Wu Jueqing smiled lightly. The next moment, Wu Jueqing took a step forward. The wind and clouds in the sky moved. The entire land seemed to be shrinking and disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. There was only one point in front of him that was slowly enlarging. Wu Jueqing's fist. Ning Tianya smiled in a carefree manner, and raised his hand to receive it. A saber suddenly appeared in his hand. It was a simple and unadorned saber that looked like a piece of wood. There wasn't even a flash of saber light on the blade. It just slashed out in a low-key manner. Ning Tianya had fought against enemies for over 10,000 years, but no one had ever seen his weapon. No one knew that Ning Tianya's weapon was actually a saber. Saber supremacy. With Buluqing, it was a saber and a sword. Today, Ning Tianya had finally revealed his trump card. Moreover, he had revealed his saber at the very beginning of the battle. It was evident that Ning Tianya did not dare to be careless in this battle. Brother Ning is indeed the saber supremacy. The Dharma Supreme's eyes flashed. Wu Jueqing's expression was like a 10,000-year-old sculpture, unmoving and unmoving. It was a direct punch, and it didn't change direction at all. The mountains, rivers, and earth seemed to be condensed in this one punch, and it struck out viciously. Bang! Ning Tianya's blade and Wu Jueqing's fist collided fiercely. The two of them froze at the same time. Then, an inexplicable tremor suddenly spread out like water ripples. At the same time, two black holes of absolute vacuum appeared in the sky. With a cracking sound, the mountain beneath their feet suddenly split open from the middle. The crack was like a long snake that suddenly appeared, becoming wider and wider. It was unknown how deep it went. The two combatants actually maintained their original postures and didn't move at all. They were separated by thousands of feet by this deep and long canyon that suddenly split open. The entire mountain was separated neatly from the middle. They became two straight cliffs. The next moment, Ning Tianya let out a long howl and said coolly, 10,000-year tribulation. That's all you've got. Wu Jueqing said dispassionately. The number one in the world is nothing more than this. The two of them raised their heads at the same time. 4 pairs of eyes stared at each other across the deep gorge. It was these 4 pairs of eyes that made the two of them feel that every change in their bodies, every change in their muscles, and every change in their auras could not be hidden from each other's eyes and senses. The battle of life and death only truly began when the two of them looked at each other. The saber and fist from before were just appetizers. Wu Jueqing let out a long howl. His black figure suddenly rose up into the sky thousands of feet high. With a wave of his hands, a formless dark cloud spread out between heaven and earth. Then, with a shake of his right hand, a black whip suddenly appeared. With a casual swing of his hand, the shadow of the whip was like the wind and the clouds surging, transforming into raging waves. The clouds in the sky were scattered by the whip. Wu Jueqing's left sleeve fluttered and turned into a patch of dark clouds. The whip in his right hand turned into a cloud mountain. Just like that, he stood proudly in the sky and shouted, Ning Tianya, come and accept your death. Ning Tianya let out a long laugh and said, Not necessarily accepting my death, but breaking the legend of the tribulation is still quite interesting. Like an arrow leaving the bow, he shot towards Wu Jueqing in the sky. Their saber and whip tangled, gradually rising higher and higher. Gradually, they actually rose above the clouds, not knowing how far they were or how high they were. The Dharma Supreme sat cross-legged on the mountaintop, a faint smile on his face. But beside him, there was a faint black fog circulating rapidly, making whooshing sounds. When the black fog passed, patches of black holes appeared and disappeared neatly. All the spiritual energy of heaven and earth between heaven and earth came roaring madly, pouring into the Dharma Supreme's body like a great river. He was channeling his energy to the limit. Ning Tianya was no match for Wu Jueqing. The Dharma Supreme had absolute confidence in this point. Ning Tianya also couldn't break free from Wu Jueqing's aura lock now. Therefore, Ning Tianya could only fight. Only after an intense battle, by exchanging injury for injury and breaking free from Wu Jueqing's aura lock, would Ning Tianya be able to leave in an instant. And what the Dharma Supreme was waiting for now was precisely such an opportunity. As long as Ning Tianya was defeated and left, then the accumulated power now would give this number 1 expert in the world a heavy blow. This blow contained all of the Dharma Supreme's power and all of his potential. As long as this blow landed, even with Wu Jueqing's cultivation, he wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. Therefore, Ning Tianya would die. At the very least, even if it didn't take his life, it was absolutely impossible for Ning Tianya to recover within a few hundred years. Both Ning Tianya and Wu Jueqing knew this. That was why Ning Tianya had said, "If you guys don't even care about your faces, then my life is also nothing." At that time, Ning Tianya already knew that the odds were against him. However, the pride of standing at the pinnacle of the world for a long time still made Ning Tianya resolutely choose to have a vigorous battle. Because with these two people joining forces and locking down on him, he might not even have the confidence to escape. Especially with Wu Jueqing's poison technique, it was a powerful weapon. Right now, the clouds had already become a sea of poisonous fog. The clouds in the sky had all become highly toxic. The spiritual energy in the sky had also become highly toxic. Wu Jueqing and Ning Tianya were engaged in an earth-shattering battle in this poisonous fog. Wu Jueqing's cultivation was much higher than Ning Tianya's. Although they were on par at the moment, Ning Tianya knew that the other party's countless trump cards had yet to be revealed. However, the moment the other party revealed his trump cards, it would be the moment he cut off the lock on him and retreated at the risk of injury. The two people's figures transformed into thousands and thousands of afterimages in the sky, and the afterimages were actually also fighting with each other. With a gloomy and long howl, Wu Jueqing leaped up expressionlessly. His tall figure rose straight into the sky and pounced, like a cloud in the sky. "Let's end this!" Wu Jueqing was obviously unwilling to fight for a long time. Although Ning Tianya was strong, he was still a distance away from a super expert like him who had already transcended the heavens. Right now, he was already very astonished. In the poisonous fog, he could breathe and change his breath on his own, but Ning Tianya couldn't. He actually held his breath and fought with an expert like him for so long. "Wu Jueqing, if you want to end this, show me your true abilities." Ning Tianya chuckled. His figure was like a shadow as he charged straight up. "Morning wind rises in the universe!" Wu Jueqing shouted loudly. His arms shook. Suddenly, the wind and clouds in the sky surged. An indescribable aura appeared abruptly, as if the heavens had collapsed at this moment and fell abruptly. A cool and refreshing smell came with the sound of the wind. The east wind was mighty. It was the morning wind. The rain of apricot blossoms that wet one's clothes and the willow wind that blew on one's face was not cold. This was the aura of a morning that belonged to spring. It was already afternoon, evening, and the twilight was already deep. However, at this time, the morning wind actually blew. Morning wind! Supreme martial artist Morning Wind's morning wind divine technique. Ning Tianya roared loudly. His long saber slashed out repeatedly. In an instant, the obscure saber light formed thousands of lightning bolts, cutting through the oncoming morning wind and slashing furiously at Wu Jueqing. This attack was the decisive battle. There was a hint of mockery in Wu Jueqing's eyes. The shadow of the whip was like a mountain, suddenly falling down. However, at the moment the shadow of the whip was released, the long whip was also released. With the power of wind and thunder, it smashed fiercely at Ning Tianya. At the same time, a sword appeared in his hand. Then, his whole person suddenly turned into flowing clouds. He became one with the flowing clouds that were drifting away in the sky, carrying with him a light and unrestrained, an inexplicable free and easy feeling. He floated out leisurely from the clouds, but swept up the sword light that drove the whole world. Became one sword. The power of thousands of winds and clouds, the power of the word blue, the power of the earth, the power of the stars, the power of the sun and the moon. At this moment, all of them were driven by this unrestrained sword light. As a whole, they converged into one sword. At this moment, Wu Jueqing recited, "Outside the heavens, one sway, one cloud!" This sword carried with it 7 parts of elegance, 2 parts of desolation, and 1 part of loneliness. It fell from the sky. Supreme martial artist flowing cloud sword. At this moment, as the morning wind blew, the flowing cloud sword carried with it a sense of transcendence from life and death as it attacked fiercely. At this moment, Ning Tianyao was facing poison Dr. Wu Jueqing's famous whip and famous poison at the same time, as well as that which had become an eternal legend in the heavens. Morning wind rises in the universe, flowing clouds sway beyond the heavens. The four great ultimate techniques. It was a hopeless situation. Ning Tianyao let out a loud roar and spat out a mouthful of blood. He laughed loudly. Wu Jueqing, let's fight again another day. All of a sudden, the sword light was as bright as the sky. It cut through the whip's shadow. It cut through the poisonous fog. It cut through the heavens and the earth. It cut through the void. It cut through the morning wind. It went against the flowing clouds. There was a loud boom. Wu Jueqing staggered and retreated in the air. However, Ning Tianyao was spitting out blood all the way as he flew away. The aura lock had been broken. Although he was severely injured, Ning Tianyao could only leave. He could leave already. Right at this moment, an indifferent voice said, Brother Ning, leave your life behind before you leave. The Dharma Supreme's black robes and long hair fluttered as he blocked Ning Tianyao's path of escape. He looked at Ning Tianyao with a ruthless gaze. Then, the hands behind his back appeared at the same time. The moment they appeared, it was 10 punches. 10 punches that carried the Dharma Supreme's lifetime of cultivation. At this moment, the punches that had been accumulating power for a long time came out at the same time. Chapter 1080. The Dharma Supreme smiled indifferently. Brother Ning, how can mere face be compared to Brother Ning's life? Ning Tianyao was a battle-hardened person. After being injured, how could he go head-on against the Dharma Supreme, whose cultivation was about the same as his and who had been recuperating for a long time? His defeat this time was already destined. A head-on clash. Ning Tianyao let out a muffled grunt, blood spurting out of his mouth again and again. He turned into green smoke and fled. Behind him, the Dharma Supreme's face suddenly turned pale. He staggered and spat out a mouthful of blood before he managed to steady himself. He reached out and caught the mouthful of blood that Ning Tianyao spat out at this moment. Bringing it to his eyes, he couldn't help but smile. In this mouthful of blood, there were clear pieces of internal organs. Ning Tianyao's hoarse voice came from afar. Dharma Supreme, Wu Jueqing. Very good, very good. Like a gust of wind, he had already become a small black dot in the distance. In the sky, Wu Jueqing smiled indifferently. Is it good? Suddenly, he turned and shouted. Sword intent! Slash! A completely material sword light appeared and chased after Ning Tianyao at lightning speed. This seemingly substantial beam of sword light was able to draw out a sword chi that stretched for hundreds of kilometers in the air. Completely material. Thousands of miles of mountains and rivers were suddenly shrouded in a murderous aura. All the mountains and valleys fell neatly at this moment. At this moment, when the Dharma Supreme saw this sword light, he couldn't help but be completely stunned. He cried out involuntarily. This is the sword intent of the Tribulation Sword Master. How can it be? The speed of this sword light was already indescribable with words. By the time Ning Tianyao discovered this sword light, it was already behind him. In great shock, he shouted, Sword intent? In the blink of an eye. Ning Tianyao tried his best to tilt his body to avoid being hit in the vital parts of his chest and abdomen. But with a muffled grunt, the sword intent came out of his left shoulder. A large bloody hole was blasted open, connecting the front and back. Ning Tianyao spat out another mouthful of blood. Without a word, he sped up and turned into a black dot, instantly disappearing from their vision. In the sky, Wu Jueqing landed with a swoosh. With a wave of his hand, that seemingly material sword intent suddenly turned back and fell into his hand. Then, it came before the Dharma Supreme. For a long time, he felt something, and didn't speak for a long time. Until the time of an incense stick. What a Ning Tianyao! I can't believe he's still alive! Wu Jueqing's countenance was solemn. He said dispassionately, I didn't expect that the current number 1 in the heavens continent has already grown to such an extent. But he is, after all, seriously injured. The Dharma Supreme smiled and said, His meridians are severely damaged. His dantian suffered a blow. Morning wind divine art suppressed his spiritual sense, flowing cloud sword destroyed a part of his soul, and my final attack shattered a part of his internal organs. On the other hand, your final strike of the astral sword dealt a heavy blow to all his injuries. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, Brother Wu, how long do you think it will take for Ning Tianya to recover his cultivation? Wu Jueqing frowned. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. It won't recover for at least 50 years. Even with the help of the heavy pill, it was absolutely impossible. Within 10 years, he would not be able to use too much of his cultivation base. Even an emperor-level expert can kill him as long as he can be found within 3 months. He is severely injured now, and is only holding on to his last breath to escape. Once he stops, he won't be able to move at all, Wu Jueqing said dispassionately. However, people like him would usually have a life-saving trump card. Therefore, since we can't catch up to him, if he really wants to hide, we won't be able to find him either. You'd better give up on this idea. The Dharma Supreme smiled and said, All right. Anyway, we've already achieved our goal. This variable has been eliminated. Wu Jueqing looked at him and said, That's right. Besides, I reckon that you won't be able to recover fully even after 7 days from the recoil. Over there, that is the most important thing. Therefore, during this period of time, healing is the most important thing for you. The Dharma Supreme smiled lightly. That's right. Let's go back immediately. Wu Jueqing tilted his head and asked, Do you have any doubts about my astral sword? The Dharma Supreme smiled bitterly and shook his head. I'm surprised, but I don't have any doubts. Wu Jueqing smiled coldly and didn't say anything. The two of them headed in the direction of Tianji City. At this moment, 15 days had passed since the end of the semi-finals of the medicine banquet. This night, Chu Yang was anxiously reading through the information collected by Nangong Shifeng and the rest. He was constantly making assumptions and resolving them, thinking of countless possibilities that had yet to happen. The door opened and Zi Xieching walked in. I have something to tell you. Zi Xieching leaned against the door and looked at Chu Yang. What is it? Chu Yang raised his head. My Tao state energy is only one battle away from being fully collected, Zi Xieching said dispassionately. You mean, you want me to fight with you? Chu Yang raised his head and asked bitterly. No, Zi Xieching said indifferently. I don't want you to send me away directly. The Tao state needed for that battle can be left to others. I just want to tell you about it. I don't have any other intentions. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Don't tell me you want to leave that battle to the big clans and law enforcement officers? In that case, you're mentally prepared? Zi Xieching hesitated for a while and said, They will definitely make a move. However, it's impossible for them to hurt me. The reason why I kept that battle alive was to see what kind of method they would use to deal with me. I'm very curious about this. Chu Yang heaved a long sigh. He didn't say anything, but his heart suddenly felt uncomfortable. He finally understood what Zi Xieching meant. It wasn't that Zi Xieching didn't know about that battle. However, it wasn't just the Dharma Supreme and the rest who were looking forward to it. Zi Xieching herself was also looking forward to it. The Dharma Supreme and the big clans wanted to clear the obstacles, but Zi Xieching also wanted to make use of that battle to clear some obstacles for Chu Yang in the future and reduce some pressure. This was the main reason why Zi Xieching was dragging it out, even though she could have transcended and left after the battle. However, Zi Xieching would never say it out loud. She would only do everything for him silently. At this moment, Chu Yang's heart was extremely bitter. Go! You don't have to wait until then. I can accompany you to comprehend and absorb the Tao state energy now. I'll send you off happily, Chu Yang said. No! It's a pity to leave now. Zi Xieching smiled faintly. You don't have to worry that I won't leave. At the latest, I will leave after 2 months. Chu Yang was disappointed. At this moment, his heart suddenly felt very painful. Looking at Zixieqing, who was leaning against the door, Chu Yang suddenly felt that she was so close to him yet so far away. They were clearly only a few feet apart, but it felt like they were separated by heaven and earth. Zixieqing seemed to be standing on the moon in the distance. Chu Yang's lips quivered a few times before he finally said, "All right." At this moment, he clearly had a lot of things to say in his heart. However, after thinking for a while, he still didn't say a word in the end. There was no need to say anything. Zixieqing looked at Chu Yang's somewhat lonely face. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something. However, after thinking for a long time, she only sighed. Similarly, she also felt that she had a lot of things to say, but ultimately, she didn't say anything. One of them sat in front of the bed while the other leaned against the door. Both of them lowered their heads and didn't speak for a long time. The night was foggy. The night was getting darker. Zixieqing's light robe was already wet from the thin fog. Chu Yang stood up silently. He picked up his black robe, walked over and gently draped it over Zixieqing's body. Zixieqing didn't say anything, nor did she resist. With Zixieqing's cultivation, not to mention this light cold fog, even if all the coldness in the northernmost glaciers gathered at this moment, she might not feel cold. However, at the moment when Chu Yang's black robe was draped over her body, she shivered slightly, as if she couldn't stand the cold. Her delicate body now gave off the feeling that she was even more fragile than before. Chu Yang draped the black robe over her body and his hands stayed still. There was an impulse and desire in his heart to hug this delicate body tightly in front of him. However, he kept his hands open and maintained the posture of draping the robe over Zixieqing. After a long time, he sighed and gently retracted his hands little by little. During this period, Zixieqing had been looking out of the window at the night sky. A trace of undetectable sadness and disappointment flashed past her eyes very quickly. "I'm going back to sleep." Zixieqing bit her lip and smiled. "Okay." Chu Yang's hands drooped down. He smiled and said, "It's indeed not early." Zixieqing nodded and smiled. "It's not early." She turned and left. Chu Yang stood there in a daze. A white shadow flashed and Zixieqing suddenly came back. She took a deep look at Chu Yang. Chu Yang was stunned. "Why?" Zixieqing smiled and suddenly turned to close the door, locking herself and Chu Yang in the room. Chu Yang suddenly felt that his mouth was dry. He said hoarsely, "You... What do you want to do?" Zixieqing said lightly, "I've promised you before that I'll leave all the heavenly treasures that I've collected from various planes to you. I just remembered tonight, so I'll give them to you first. Otherwise, when I get busy in a few days and forget about it, it'll be bad." Chu Yang smiled dryly. He suddenly felt a little disappointed and said somewhat subconsciously, "Oh, it's about this." Zixieqing rolled her eyes at him and said, "What did you think it was?" As she said, she waved her hand. Suddenly, a pile of heavenly treasures appeared in front of Chu Yang, almost filling up the room. "Quickly keep them. Why are you standing there like a fool?" Zixieqing said angrily. "Oh." Chu Yang hurriedly kept them in the tribulation space. Zixieqing released them 3 times in a row before finally indicating that there were no more. She smiled softly and said, "You can ask the sword spirit to help you with some of these medicines. They can help you upgrade the spiritual spring water to the spring of life." "Okay." Chu Yang didn't know what he was saying or doing. He only felt that he was sleepwalking. Zixieqing smiled and turned to leave. The door creaked and closed. This time, Zixieqing didn't appear again. The night was cold and windy. Chu Yang stood there in a daze and looked at the door. Finally, he sighed deeply and murmured, "Two worlds, a long starry sky. Once we part, we won't meet again." Chapter 1081. He heaved a long sigh. In the space of tribulation, the sword spirit was inspecting the elixirs that suddenly came in. He was so happy that he danced. "I'm really rich now. So many heavenly treasures. I've never seen many of them before. But their effects are as powerful as before. I'm rich." The sword spirit was extremely excited. Rich? Chu Yang's consciousness sank into the space of tribulation. With a straight face, he said coldly, "You only know how to be rich." The sword spirit laughed, and didn't mind. He said, "The quality of this batch of elixirs is very high. In total, there were 3,700 stocks. And the most valuable part should be from the heavens." He blinked mysteriously. "That mysterious plane," Chu Yang said lightly. "Oh? So many?" Sensing that Chu Yang wasn't in a good mood, the sword spirit was a little puzzled. Why did he still have such a straight face when he had such a big harvest just now? What was going on? "How are the best quality of these elixirs compared to the great miracle herbs?" Chu Yang asked. "They can't be compared," the sword spirit said. "Although the great miracle herbs may not be able to surpass these heavenly treasures in terms of efficacy, they contain the power of the heavenly way of the heavens. That's why they are the main component of heavy elixirs. These elixirs, especially those from the heavenly way, have medicinal efficacy that surpasses the great miracle herbs. But they don't have the power of the heavenly way in them, so they can't be compared." "Oh." Chu Yang was silent for a while. Then he said, "If it's heavy elixirs, will they be effective on people like Big Sister Z?" The sword spirit became serious this time. He said, "Zi Xieching's cultivation is too high. If she's injured, it won't be an ordinary injury. Ordinary heavy elixirs won't be of much help to her." "Ordinary heavy elixirs won't work?" Chu Yang sensitively found the key point. He said, "That is to say, there are special heavy elixirs that can be effective." "Yes." The sword spirit deeply regretted his slip of the tongue again. "Then, I want such special heavy elixirs," Chu Yang said with certainty. "At least 10 of them." "At least 10 of them?" The sword spirit jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Dream on! Now that all the great miracle herbs have been refined, only 15 of those super heavy elixirs can be refined. Don't you know that among the new medicines, there are less than 100 of the most valuable ones? If I were to refine the kind of heavy pill you need, I'm afraid at least 80 of them would be gone just like that. Furthermore, this is the minimum requirement. At most, you can refine 1 pellet. It can be used by Zi Xieching to heal her injuries or improve her cultivation." The sword spirit jumped up and down. 10 pills! At the very least! You're going to damage the foundation of the miracle medicine. What's more, those medicines aren't enough. Then, 1 is fine. Chu Yang remained unmoved. He didn't take the sword spirit's words to heart. The sword spirit heaved a long sigh. His complexion was ashen, and he seemed to have lost his soul. It could be seen that he was extremely reluctant. "Sword spirit, I don't want to do this either." However, Big Sister Z was about to leave. In the future, she would be the only one to roam the boundless skies alone. Alone and without help, she left all the heavenly treasures to me at this time. Chu Yang said in a deep voice, "What if I get hurt or bullied? Even if I were to refine 10 heavy pills for her now, it would only guarantee her 10 chances. That's all. However, the heavenly treasures she gave me are enough to support my foundation in this heavenly realm." The sword spirit sighed helplessly. "I knew it's because of this." "All right. But at most, 1 pellet. Furthermore, the spiritual energy here isn't sufficient. Even if you take it, it won't be very effective. So, it will only be effective when you reach the heavenly imperial court?" Chu Yang asked. "There's such a strange thing? It's not that it can't be used here. It's just that after taking it, you won't be able to gather enough spiritual energy to clear your body in the shortest time possible. Therefore, a large part of the medicinal effect of the heavy pill will be wasted. However, if Zi Xieching takes it when she reaches that place, it won't be a problem to bring her back to life." The sword spirit explained. "For example, if taking 1 of such heavy pills here can increase your cultivation by 500 years, then in the heavenly imperial court, it can increase your cultivation by 2,000 years. Do you understand what I mean?" "I see." Chu Yang finally understood. "What a waste! Yes, there were some things that could only be used to their greatest effect in certain places and under certain circumstances. Just like what the sword spirit said, heavy pills. Chu Yang suddenly thought of the conspiracy of the big clans. He couldn't help but frown and murmured. Certain places, specific environments. He started to ponder. In the temporary residence of the Ling clan, Ling Hanwu tiptoed out of the room. He didn't know what was going on with this winter. It was almost the end of the year, but there was no sign of snow. This made Ling Hanwu anxious. Ling Hanwu's greatest wish in life was to see the snow with the person he loved the most. The white fairies that flew all over the sky poured out all of their feelings, all of their thoughts, all of their unwillingness, and deep love onto the white snow. From then on, he would have no regrets in life. Even if he died at that time, he wouldn't have any regrets. However, the heavens didn't show any signs of this. Looking at the gloomy sky, it seemed that it was going to snow soon. Ling Hanwu was going out again. A figure flashed and a person stood at the door with his hands behind his back, looking at him coldly. You're going out again? Yes, ancestor. Ling Hanwu stood with his hands behind his back. The person in front of him was Ling Fengyan. He was also the person Ling Hanwu admired the most in his life. You're going to see that girl from the Yi clan again? Ling Fengyan asked lightly. I heard that ever since Yi Chuchen came here, you've been going to see her almost every day. Yes. Ling Hanwu's heart trembled. He felt that the ancestor wasn't in a good mood today and couldn't help but be careful. She has no interest in you. Don't pester her, Ling Fengyan said lightly. Ling Hanwu was about to speak. However, Ling Fengyan said lightly. The last few times you went to see Yi Chuchen, you always brought a follower with you. Now, that follower of yours is missing. However, that follower of yours looks unfamiliar to me. He shouldn't be from the Ling clan, right? Where is he now? The corners of Ling Hanwu's mouth twitched. He said, Ancestor, that's a friend of mine. He came to the medicine banquet to broaden his horizons. That friend of yours is Mengin, right? Ling Fengyan's eyes suddenly shot out a sharp light. Your best friend is your love rival, right? Ling Hanwu's heart shook. He said, Yes. Ling Fengyan paced 2 steps and said lightly, I managed to protect you at the medicine banquet last time, but it also incurred the wrath of the Dharma Supreme because of this. Don't run around during this critical period. Just stay at home. Ling Hanwu kept quiet and didn't speak. Ling Fengyan asked casually, I heard that Mengin changed his name to Meng Chaoran? Ling Hanwu's whole body shook. He still didn't speak, but the expression in his eyes changed rapidly. I heard that Meng Chaoran is Chu Yang's teacher? Ling Fengyan said lightly. And Chu Yang is the descendant of Chu Xiaoxin. And that Chu Xiaoxin once killed 17 people from the Ling clan and snatched away the most precious heavenly wood? Ling Hanwu couldn't understand what Ling Fengyan meant, but he felt his heart tremble a little. And Chu Yang is like the sun now. Ling Fengyan smiled lightly. So, don't go to Yi Chuchen's place. So as not to cause unnecessary trouble and cause misunderstandings. Ling Hanwu raised his head abruptly, even his voice changed a little. Elder Master, could it be that the clan wants to deal with Meng Chaoran? You don't need to know about this, Ling Fengyan said lightly. He looked at him sternly and lectured. You are a man who values relationships and have no regrets. You have the strength of character of a man. So, even though I know that you indulge your love rival, it's for the sake of the woman you love, so I will try my best to keep it a secret and fulfill your feelings. But now is a critical period. The Yi clan has already sensed something. It's not suitable for you to interfere. Ling Fengyan let out a long sigh. Hanwu, you are a junior that I like very much. I also know that matters of the heart cannot be forced. A person only has one true love that is engraved in his bones and engraved in his heart. You've already had it. So don't keep thinking about it. Ling Hanwu was stunned. Suddenly, his mind was in a mess. He said in a hoarse voice, The Yi clan already knows about this? How did they find out? Ling Fengyan frowned. You don't need to know about this. Ling Hanwu lowered his head in a daze and murmured. Someone in the Ling clan betrayed me? Impudent! Ling Fengyan shouted angrily. You're the one who betrayed us! How can you say that others betrayed you? Ling Hanwu smiled miserably. Back then, when Mengin got into trouble, Chuchen wanted to commit suicide several times. She was in so much pain that she wanted to die. Now that so many years have passed, the feelings from back then have not weakened at all. If something happens to Meng Chaoran in front of her again, she will die. She will die, Ling Fengyan said lightly. But that has nothing to do with you anymore. Ling Hanwu took 2 steps back, his face full of despair. Go back. Ling Fengyan comforted him lightly. Go back and have a good sleep. You'll realize that everything is over. All your worries will be gone. Ling Hanwu bit his lips and suddenly chuckled. He strode forward and walked to the door of the courtyard. He looked at Ling Fengyan with a determined gaze and said, I want to go. Ling Fengyan's white robes fluttered in the cold wind, his gaze fixed on him. I want to go. Ling Hanwu said each word clearly. His voice was filled with determination. Chapter 1082. Ling Fengyan looked at him quietly. Ling Hanwu met his gaze without backing down. The two of them didn't move for a long time. Ling Hanwu had always admired this elder master. He had always regarded him as his idol. In the past, whenever he saw him, he would prostrate on the ground and never dared to raise his head to look at him. For a long time, the endless legends about the elder master had become an immortal monument in the heart of the Ling clan. One could only look up to him. One couldn't look at him. But this time, he resolutely and stubbornly raised his head to look at the elder master in the eyes. At this moment, he suddenly realized that actually, when he really raised his head, it was just like this. The elder master was also human. He was also made of flesh and blood. Looking at the pair of eyes that flashed with arrogance, pride and stubbornness, Ling Fengyan sighed deeply. At this moment, his heart was somewhat palpitating. Many years ago, he was also like this. Ling Fengyan admired Ling Hanwu not because he was the grandson of the Ling clan. The most important reason was that Ling Hanwu's path of love was exactly the same as his. Astonishingly similar. That was why Ling Fengyan saw Ling Hanwu, this great-grandson of his, in a different light. Now that he saw Ling Hanwu, it was as if he saw himself in the past. It was the same bitter love, the same despair, the same sadness, the person the woman fell in love with was the enemy of the clan. In the end, she was killed by the clan. Looking at Ling Hanwu's stubborn eyes, Ling Fengyan was in a trance. It was as if he had returned to that night. That night, at the peak of the snowy peak, white snow flew everywhere. That woman stumbled to him, begging him to save that man. He wanted to go and was about to go, but was stopped by his father. At that time, that woman's face was full of tears and she called out to him frantically. Her face was full of despair. As long as you save him, I'll let you do whatever you want to me. You can do whatever you want. I'll be your slave or servant, your wife or concubine. Fengyan, as long as you can let him live. That shrill cry seemed to still be by his ears. He didn't go in the end. When the matter was over, he brought that woman over. That man's corpse was already lying on the snow. I will never forget that woman's despair and madness at that time. She stared deeply at him, her eyes filled with endless resentment and bone-deep hatred. She didn't say anything. She just pulled out her sword and tied her hair with his. Then, she cut herself with the sword. She fell into the arms of that man's corpse, tying their hair and becoming husband and wife. Was that the fate of the next life? But she didn't even want to say a final word before she died. It had been a few thousand years, but Ling Fengyan could never forget that scene. Decades later, she finally calmed down and got married. On the night of her wedding, she dreamed of that scene again. For thousands of years, it had become his inner demon. His cultivation had also reached the peak of 8th grade supreme martial artist, and he could not advance any further. Everything was because of that incident. The inner demon locked onto his heart, and he wouldn't rest until he was dead. Ling Fengyun was lost in his thoughts, forgetting that there was someone in front of him. Ling Hanwu looked at him for a while. He walked out resolutely and was about to step out of the courtyard. "Stop right there!" Ling Fengyun shouted. Ling Hanwu stopped at the door. But he didn't turn back. "We are dealing with Chu Yang now," Ling Fengyun said. "We must kill Chu Yang. But it's not advisable to make use of his teacher to threaten him. If you want to go, I won't stop you. But you have to think about it yourself. This time, it concerns the survival of the big clans. If you go, you may die," Ling Fengyun said in a low voice. There was something in his heart that he didn't say out loud. If you go and don't die, then when you come back, it means that your biggest inner demon has been removed. The Ling clan will have another peak second-grade supreme martial artist, or even an expert who can collapse the sky and break the void. "I know," Ling Hanwu replied lightly. "I'm already over 40 years old this year, almost 50 years old. My mentality is very mature. I know what I'm doing and the consequences," Ling Hanwu said quietly. "But I can't control my heart. I can't control my emotions either. I don't want to control them. After so many years, if I wanted to, I would have gotten it long ago. But I've been helping them and fulfilling her wishes. It has become a habit of mine. I don't want to force her to do anything. I can die. But Mengjin can't die," Ling Hanwu said softly. Ling Fengyun heaved a long sigh. "Go!" Ling Hanwu turned around and knelt down with a thud. He repeatedly kowtowed to Ling Fengyun's back. Then, without a word, he rose into the air and left. At the moment he swept out of the Ling clan's courtyard, the cold wind that came head-on hit his face with its icy moisture. Ling Hanwu suddenly had an inexplicable thought. If decades later, when Yi Chuchen was happily married and had a house full of children and grandchildren, would she think of him? As he thought about it, the corners of his mouth curled up into a sad smile. Coldness fell from the sky. Joy flashed across Ling Hanwu's face. "It's snowing! Is it finally snowing? Could it be that my wish?" Ling Fengyun listened as he knelt down, kowtowed, got up, and got up. He didn't move. After a long time, he said softly, "You must come back alive." Snowflakes drifted down. The first snow of this winter finally fell in Tianji City. It slowly became more and more frightening. In these few days, Chu Yang had been paying close attention to the movements in the city. At the same time, he supervised Mo Qingwu, Dong Wushang and the rest in their cultivation, and supervised the sword's spirit in refining medicine. He was making preparations in all aspects in an orderly manner. In fact, he had even prepared a large number of incomplete heavy pills, including the possibility of casualties in the upcoming war. During this period of time, Nangong Shifeng's life was extremely fulfilling. Every day, he would tirelessly collect all kinds of information and send it to Chu Yang. And every time he sent it to him, Chu Yang would also start to treat Nangong Shifeng. So every time he left, Nangong Shifeng would feel that his old illness had eased a lot. In his excitement, he worked even harder to collect information. What he couldn't understand the most was that Chu Yang now even wanted information about any movement in Tianji City. This increased Nangong Shifeng's workload. It forced him to spend a lot of crystals. Firstly, it was to buy, and secondly, it was to hire some local gangsters. In these few days, Nangong Shifeng had almost become the boss of the local gangsters. Every day, every moment, there would be many people coming to deliver information. Then Nangong Shifeng would collect these worthless information and take out a lot of crystals. After the day's summary, he would send it to Chu Yang as usual. After Nangong Shifeng left, Chu Yang started to read bit by bit. It wasn't that he didn't have hope for these pieces of information, but they played a very small role. He could only guess any clues from them. Towards the end, his eyes were already a little tired. Looking at the sky, it was already evening and dusk had descended. He stretched and was about to take a rest when suddenly, a piece of information jumped into his eyes. Chu Yang's mind quivered and he froze in his stretching posture. He felt a chill down his spine. His spirit was immediately lifted. The information was as follows. Many people from the Yi clan seemed to have gone south, towards the direction of the South City Gate. The leader was Yi Shiyu. The number was unknown, their cultivation was unknown, and their purpose was unknown. It was speculated that they were going to a hotel? Or Yi Chuchen's residence, Yi Chuchen's residence. This word made Chu Yang suddenly alert. Ever since Yi Chuchen came to Tianji City, she had been living there. She was almost isolated from the world and rarely appeared. Chu Yang had secretly gone there before, but he didn't meet her even after several visits. The Yi clan also rarely went there. Why did the Yi clan go there in such a large scale today? There didn't seem to be any reason for the Yi clan to go there. He thought of his teacher, Meng Chaoran, who had disappeared since entering the city, and Ling Hanwu buying good things every day during this period. Chu Yang suddenly thought of a scary thing. Could it be that his teacher was at Yi Chuchen's place now? Could it be that the Yi clan went there in such a large scale for him? Chu Yang jumped up suddenly. His instincts made his heart beat wildly, and he broke out in cold sweat instantly. With a bang, Chu Yang rushed out of the room. The courtyard was empty. Moon Breeze had brought their disciple somewhere. Zi Xieching had brought the two little girls, Chu Luer and Mo Qing Wu, out shopping and hadn't returned yet. Dong Wushang and Rui Budong were meditating. Bu Luqing was sitting under the flower rack, drinking in boredom. Once Chu Yang went out, he thought for a while and went straight to the flower rack. Dong Wushang and the rest couldn't help him now. The only safe thing now was to ask Bu Luqing for help. It was better to be safe than sorry. It didn't matter if he made a wasted trip, but if something happened to Meng Chaoran, Chu Yang would never forgive himself. Elder Bu! Help me out, accompany me to do something, Chu Yang said anxiously. What is it? Bu Luqing rolled his eyes and said, Can't you see that I'm busy? Chu Yang's face was sweating. It's an urgent matter. Bu Luqing was unmoved. Are you going or not? Chu Yang was anxious. He threatened. If you don't accompany me and delay my important matter, when little Wu comes back, I will immediately instigate her to break off her master-disciple relationship with you. I'm not joking with you. How dare you? Bu Luqing was furious. Don't you know what kind of person I am? If I say it, I can do it. Chu Yang lowered his voice and leaned close to Bu Luqing's ear. With a dangerous tone, he said word by word. You know, I'm the Tribulation Sword Master. Fuck you. Bu Luqing stood up. Don't mention these words to me. I'm allergic to these words. I cramp when I hear them. Damn you. This was the first time in my life that I was threatened like this. And it's you, a brat. So are you going or not? Chu Yang asked fiercely. I'll go. Bu Luqing only felt anger in his chest, almost exploding. He said angrily. I'll go with you. I'm warning you. If there's nothing else, don't blame me for being impolite. My waist is very uncomfortable. I'll take an hour off. I'll go out for a massage. When I come back, I'll continue to write the third update, so it might be late. Chapter 1083. Yi Chuchen liked peace and quiet and was not willing to participate in anything. Ever since she came to Tianji City, she had occupied a small courtyard all by herself. This place was located in the outskirts of the city and had beautiful scenery. There was a sense of seclusion and tranquility. Yi Chuchen liked places like this. In the Yi clan, ever since the incident back then, the clan members seemed to have a subtle sense of guilt towards Yi Chuchen. No matter what request Yi Chuchen made, they would not reject it. But Yi Chuchen rarely made requests. Her only request was that the place she lived in must be elegant and quiet, and she did not like to be disturbed by others. Therefore, the Yi clan had also tried his best to fulfill this request. But all these requests did not include Mengin. In the past, they did not know and did not pay attention to a small fry like Chu Yang. But now, Chu Yang's power was growing day by day, to the extent that even the big clans could not ignore him. The Yi clan had no choice but to consider him. And at this time, they found out from the Dharma Supreme that Meng Gain was Meng Chaoran, and Meng Chaoran was actually Chu Yang's master. This fact caused the Yi family members to be greatly shocked. How could the Yin clan not know what kind of enmity the Yi clan had with Meng Chaoran? The enmity of killing one's family and exterminating one's clan. It could be said that as long as Meng Chaoran existed, the Yi clan would not be able to eat or sleep well. And now, Meng Chaoran's disciple actually possessed such tyrannical strength. Then, when Meng Chaoran reunited with his disciple one day, would he take revenge on the Yi clan? This was something that did not even need to be thought about. What was most satisfying was that the Yi clan actually found out from the Ling clan that Meng Chaoran was now in Tianji City. And he was probably with Yi Chuchen right now. If the Yi clan did not make a move, then they would really be fools. The small building had its back against the mountains and faced the clear water. The cold winter landscape was especially bleak. Yi Chuchen sat in front of the window. It was already afternoon, and the water in front of the building had a thick mist rising. Her eyes were as misty as the mist. Behind her was a figure in green. His face was ordinary, but his aura was elegant and otherworldly. "It's snowing," Yi Chuchen murmured. "It's snowing." The person behind him unconsciously replied with a smile. "It's usually your favorite time when it snows. Why are you unhappy now? Dean, tell me. What do you think our future will be like?" Yi Chuchen's eyes were bleak as she looked at the misty snowflakes outside and asked softly. He seemed to be mumbling to himself. "Future." The person behind her was none other than Meng Chaoran in disguise. He smiled softly, as if he had seen through the world. "I never thought that the two of us would have a future." He smiled faintly, as if he had come to a realization. "The days we spent together were like a dream. With each passing day, there will be one less person. Haha, that's why I never think about what will happen after today." Yi Chuchen smiled miserably. "That's right. My father killed all your relatives. As long as you're alive, you must take revenge. But that was my father. The two of us had no future to begin with." Meng Chaoran fell silent. Vengeance must be protected. But how could he repay her love? This was a dead knot that could never be untied. It lay between the two of them. With this dead knot, the two of them couldn't even elope. Because when they saw each other day and night, how could they not think of hatred? Yi Chuchen would remember that her father was Meng Chaoran's enemy, and so would Meng Chaoran. If they weren't together, they would be tormented by lovesickness, emaciated and depressed. But if they were together, they would be tormented all the same. This pair of lovers had fallen into the most terrifying cycle for lovers in the world. Meng Gain changed his name to Meng Chaoran. He wanted to be detached from the world and look down on everything. But he couldn't really be detached after all. "Perhaps only death can release me," Meng Chaoran said leisurely. "Death? Is it that easy?" Yi Chuchen also smiled. "If death is possible, I really don't want to live anymore. When I can't see you, I want to see you every day. But when I see you, I'll think of those things, and I'll be in so much pain that I want to die. This is a dead knot." Meng Chaoran sighed deeply. "I've seen through life and death, seen through worldly affairs, and seen through worldly affairs. But the only thing I haven't seen through is you, the only thing I haven't seen through is hatred." Yi Chuchen leaned back slightly and leaned her shoulder against Meng Chaoran's chest. With tears in her eyes, she said, "Let's not think about those things. They'll know that you're here sooner or later. Maybe then we'll be free." Meng Chaoran chuckled and hugged her. "So I came here just to spend some time with you. I've never thought of leaving." "Right at this moment," a strange voice said plainly. "The problem is, even if you want to leave, you can't. You can't even leave." Yi Chu Bao and Meng Chaoran were shocked and looked up at the same time. On the opposite side of the small staircase, there were two men in black. They were riding the waves and coming over. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. People wearing the Yi clan's uniform flew over from all directions. In an instant, the small building was completely surrounded. "Yi Shiyu!" After the initial shock, Yi Chuchen actually calmed down in an instant. She shouted, "Come out! How dare you? Who allowed you to do this?" A figure flashed and Yi Shiyu appeared downstairs. This time, he didn't show his sissy side. Instead, he said seriously, "Aunt, I'm sorry. This operation was personally arranged by the Elder Master. I'm just following orders. In fact, everything has nothing to do with me. The operation is not under my command. My only purpose here is to prove that the direct descendant of the Yi clan is involved in this matter and to end this matter. That's all." Yi Chuchen smiled faintly. "So, it's the clan's intention to capture Mengin?" Yi Shiyu said frankly. "This time, the clan's intention is only to capture Mengin. They definitely won't kill him." Meng Chao Rant's eyes shone sharply. He chuckled. "Are they using me to deal with my disciple?" Yi Shiyu said. "Uncle Meng is indeed wise." Meng Chao Ran smiled faintly and said, "As a master, I'm very ashamed. I can't help my disciple at all. If I help the enemy, I won't even have the face to die." Someone at the side said, "What nonsense! Hurry up and capture him. Go back and report." With a loud bang, the small building suddenly broke into pieces, and the whole building collapsed. Yi Chuchen and Meng Chao Ran flew out of the window and stood by the pond. With two clangs, the two of them drew their swords at the same time. The small building behind them slowly collapsed. "Aunt, are you going to make a move too?" Yi Shiyu asked bitterly. Yi Chuchen's expression darkened. She turned and looked at Meng Chao Ran with tenderness in her eyes. Finally, she said softly, "Many years ago, my heart was already given to this person. What happened back then was our Yi clan's fault. This matter has long been publicly acknowledged. There's no need to say more. But the trouble and pain this matter has caused for both of us is incomparable. For so many years, I've always wanted to become Mengin's wife and the daughter-in-law of the Meng clan, but my wish has never been fulfilled." Yi Chuchen smiled miserably. With a flash of her sword, she cut off a strand of Meng Chao Rant's hair and her own hair. Yi Chuchen carefully tied the two strands of hair together tightly, her face full of happiness and satisfaction. "Today, before I die, I have to fulfill this wish no matter what. After all, I'm going to die soon. Before I die, I don't have to think so much about what I do. So, I might as well not think about it." Yi Chuchen turned and looked at Meng Chao Ran with tenderness in her eyes. "Gin, remember, from now on, we're already husband and wife. Chuchu is your wife, the daughter-in-law of the Meng clan. If there's a next life, don't forget." Meng Chao Ran's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. He tried hard to smile. "That's good too. After this battle, the enmity, hatred, affection, and love will all disappear. Haha, that's how it is. Getting married before a battle is also a story to be passed down for generations." The two of them suddenly knelt down side by side with stern expressions. "The heavens above bear witness to us. Today, Meng Chao Ran and Yi Chuchen swear to the heavens that we're husband and wife. We don't ask to grow old together, but we ask to be together for all eternity." The two of them bowed to the heavens and bowed to each other once before they stood up. They smiled at each other. They actually didn't take the impending life and death crisis to heart at all. Yi Chuchen turned around and smiled. "Let's not talk about the past for now. Let's pretend that there's no enmity between us. But now, I'm already Meng Chao Rant's wife. If you want to kill him, you want to kill my husband. I can't just wait to die. I'll fight back with all my might until I lose my life in your hands." The Yi clan members looked at each other, not knowing whether to advance or retreat. What should they do about this matter? Eldest Miss was so resolute. Did she really want to kill her own family's eldest miss with her own hands? The snowflakes turned from sparse to dense and fluttered down. In an instant, it was pure white. A cold and gloomy voice said, "She's already someone else's daughter-in-law. What does she have to do with the Yi clan? Why should we have any more scruples? Let's attack together and kill this adulterous pair." The person who spoke had a unique gloomy tone that was immediately recognizable. Yi Di, the Yi clan's elder master. Yi Chuchen and Meng Chao Ran revealed a look of relief at the same time. They had waited for more than 10 years. They had been waiting for this sentence. And it was from the most revered elder master of the Yi clan. She's already someone else's daughter-in-law. What does she have to do with the Yi clan? They were relieved. But it was a pity that what was about to come after this relief was life and death. The Yi clan members roared and rushed forward. Wait! A voice filled with grief and despair shouted. If you want to kill them, you'll have to kill me first. A white figure, which seemed to be the same color as the snow, suddenly jumped out. Ling Hanwu. When Ling Hanwu arrived, it was at the moment when the small building collapsed. He was filled with joy. Although he might die this time, it was snowing. It wasn't bad to admire the snowy scenery with Yi Chuchen on the battlefield. Bai Xian's wish was fulfilled. It was also fulfilling friendship, fulfilling love and fulfilling one's wish. However, he had come full of joy and excitement. Amidst the fluttering snow, he heard the vows of Yi Chuchen and Meng Chao Ran. At that moment, Ling Hanwu's heart shattered into pieces. In this snowy land that he had been looking forward to for a long time, which should have made him delirious with joy, he was dumbstruck and his heart was like dead ashes. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.